Not talking about somebody who's actually a child, should be thought of as a child. It's more like positions of authority. It's not about people's mental capacity. It's not about their abilities. It's about the degree of respect or deference you are expected to show somebody when you are positioned in a particular role. It's not that that person is a child and you treat them as a child.
Residents of the Agnesway farm near Grill in Mpumalanga are accusing the Wakefield Colliery coal mine of operating closer to their homes, exposing them to dust and noise on a daily basis. The locals are also accusing the mine of failing to fulfill the promises made before it started its operations. The residents say the mining company promised to relocate them to a better place.
It seems as if they don't care about us because they are only affecting us and destroying anything of us. But we had a lot of meeting with them, but they promising, but there's nothing happening.
Since the mining is operating, they didn't even keep their promises. They didn't give us the job. We are still waiting for the mine to give us some better job and better opportunity.
Meanwhile, Wakefield Colliery Coal Mine General Manager Amos Mtsweni says their plan is to relocate the farm dwellers to a rental place. He says they will build them houses later. Mtsweni says their plans are being frustrated by the ever-changing demands of some community leaders.
As a mine, we didn't object to build the houses for them. In that meeting, they requested us again that they want the houses now with the title deeds. We explained again to them, we cannot get a house now and get a title deed now. This is a process. We have agreed that we are going to rent the place for them, where they are going to be relocated and stay there up until the municipality is giving us the house, the stands.
U.S. President Donald Trump's former advisor Elon Musk has stepped up his criticism of the president's tax and spending bill as senators continue to vote on amendments. Musk has condemned the bill as insane. The BBC's Jake Kwan has more.
President Trump is chastising any holdouts to pass this bill. It is a very slim margin. And we just saw that Elon Musk not only threatened to start his own party, but he will back any politicians to run against the Republican members who will be voting for this bill come the midterms election next year. So the Republican lawmakers who are in the chamber right now are really stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one side, you have the world's richest man who is threatening to fund your opponents next year. And on the other side is, of course, President Trump.
Recapping the top story, the third technical meeting of the G20 on the empowerment of women is underway at Kruger National Park in Mpumalanga. I am Ondilambana for SFM News Headlines at 3:30.
In your sports this hour, Proteas smashed Zimbabwe by 328 runs. SASCOC shifts focus to 2040. This is after a failed 2036 Olympic Games bid attempt. And Peguela crashes out of Wimbledon. More details at 3:30.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Have you been checking out Elon Musk versus Donald Trump or Donald Trump versus Elon Musk? I suggest you do check them out because there's not a moment that these allies and sometimes adversaries do not bore us. There's just so much that goes on between the two. The latest of the conversations, well, I mean, if you remember, going back about a month ago, in fact, on the 5th of June, Elon Musk put out a tweet poll saying, is it time to create a new political party in America that actually represents the 80% in the middle? 80% of those people who voted said yes. And, he's got that tweet at 150 million views. Just think of the magnitude, okay? Now, a lot has happened since then. So Donald Trump, he's got his own truth platform. This is what he said overnight. right? He said Elon Musk knew long before he so strongly endorsed me for president that I was strongly against the EV mandate. It is ridiculous. It was always a major part of my campaign. Electric cars are fine, but not everyone should be forced to own one. Elon may get more subsidy than any human being in history by far. And without subsidies, Elon would probably have to close up shop and head back home to South Africa. No more rocket launches, satellites, or electric car production, and our country would save a fortune. Fortune all in capitals, right? Perhaps we should have Dodge take a good, hard look at this. Big money to be saved. There we are. Donald Trump versus Elon Musk. Welcome to the National Pulse. My name's Ashraf Garda. As always, great to connect with you. We got 3 hours of lots to talk about, including speaking to the ANC around 5:10 around their thoughts about where they're heading with regard to ANC versus the DA, if I can say that. But I thought to set the scene, let's chat to Mbazima Shalowa, one-time Premier of Gauteng, former leader of COPE as well, and now styled as a columnist. And we thought we'll get his thoughts on some of the big topical current affairs issues that impact our country right now. So, Mbazima, good to connect with you as always on the National Pulse.
Thank you very much, Arshaf, and welcome for the discussion, and greetings to the listeners.
Thank you. Well, I mean, let's start with this, right? Do you think that the ANC and the DA, we're talking now 2025, right? Do they really need each other in government?
Yes, I think they need each other. Normally, unless you're really going by people that you agree with, to create a coalition of the nature that the ANC had, which on paper should be stable, because at least, you've got 40% and 20% odd like, so it means that it can be stable. So I think they need each other. I don't think that's where the problem lies. The problem lies that with the DA, every time there's a disagreement, their first call is not to say, we don't agree with this, but let's sit down and talk. Equally, for the ANC to respond and say, look, you may be wrong in how you're reacting, but we're happy to talk. So that's not what happened. What happens is that the DA says, well, we are likely to leave the coalition. And the ANC says, well, if you want to go, you can go. It's the same in normal relationships. You can't always threaten to leave a relationship every time there's a disagreement. So yes, they need one another, but they will need to learn to compromise with each other, accepting that their differences did not certainly vanish because they are now in a coalition together.
Now, I mean, if you say that the ANC and the DA needs each other, why, in your opinion, why do you think they need each other? Because there are many others who think they don't need each other.
Yes, I think they need each other because if you leave aside the rhetoric of the ANC and that of the DA, their economic policies are generally the same. They disagree in nuance on affirmative action, black economic empowerment, but in general, their policies on how to grow the economy, create jobs, are more or less the same. It's just that each one tries to make them sound like they are better than the other one. And then, of course, the constituencies try and buy in it. So I'm saying their policy, the ANC policies are close to those of the DA, and DA knows that their policies are closely aligned to that of the ANC. Let them sit down and say, how do we do this in a manner that carries both their constituencies?
Now, you made a point earlier about them when they disagree with each other, they tend to disagree very publicly, as opposed to a nice, behind closed doors conversation, threshing things out. Clearly, I mean, they're not naive. Both parties, they're not new parties. They've been around for a long time. They have established leadership. Considering they know the pitfalls of having these very, very public spats, why then do you think they still continue doing so, both sides?
Because every disagreement is aimed at that constituency that does not like the the coalition. So, for instance, the DA knows that there are some in there who don't want them to be in that coalition, and who say the ANC always get its way. Why are you people allowing them? Why don't you just pull out? So they are trying to respond to that constituency. Similarly with the ANC, there are those who never wanted them to be together. So we will always say, you see, these are your chosen partners. Look at how they respond to your agreement. So they're trying to say, well, no, we don't back them. Let them go. The DA is not going to go. The ANC is not going to ask them to leave, because I think both know the consequences thereof.
Well, let's talk about the consequences. So, I mean, yes, I've said so even yesterday when I chatted to the DA spokesperson. So they're not going to part ways. There's lots of huffing and puffing, but they both understand they're not going to blow the house down, right? So we are aligned to that, right? But let's assume the unthinkable happens and they surprise us and they do part ways. Then who picks up that space and what happens to the governance of our country?
Let me say that you are right, that stranger things have happened in politics. So it is possible that even as we think they may not part ways, closer to the national elections or something happening, they may part ways. My view is that even if they part ways, governance is not going to fall. In fact, if you look at the budget that was passed, or at least the budget framework that was passed without MKP, without the EFF, without the DA, it tells you that even if the DA was to say, we are out of here, or the ANC was to say, let them go, or whatever the circumstances, there will still be a government of national unity, because the rest of the parties are likely to stay, and there are a number of smaller parties that may come on board who may not now necessarily be comfortable with being there with the DA there. So I think it will survive.
Well, we're having a fascinating chat with Imbazima Shalowa, a former premier, maybe once a premier, always a premier, I don't know. But anyway, he's the former Gauteng premier and leader of COPE as well, right? And we're chatting for the next few minutes about effectively the ANC versus the DA, or maybe the ANC and the DA. We'll take your calls on that issue just after we wrap up this conversation. So not quite now, but in a few minutes' time. 086 000 2032, and then WhatsApp 0614 104 107. Voice notes or text 30 seconds each under that umbrella of, do they really need each other? ANC versus DA. Let's get back to our conversation. I mean, considering all the things you've said, and I think you're right about the budget being passed and the lessons to learn from that, right? But do you get a sense that in broad speak, even if they did part ways, then come the election the next time, unless a party gets a 50% plus one, and it's not likely, that in fact this is the established centrist coalition of South Africa, perhaps for the next 10 years, maybe even longer?
I think there's more likely to be a centrist coalition, because I don't think that the DA will pick up enough votes to be able to lead a coalition. And I don't think that the ANC may lose more votes such that it may not be part or leader of the coalition. The whole issue really is it will in all likelihood always be an ANC-led coalition. Depending on which leader is there, you may coalesce with the DA, or they may even coalesce with the EFF Or they may do what is happening now in Gauteng, wherein you've got a minority government, which I don't want to jinx them and say that they seem stable, but I mean, I don't know how they will do it to pass the budget, but for now they seem more stable as a minority government than National is, even as a bigger government with the DA and the ANC.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. A lot of the ANC future depends very much on the role of Cyril Ramaphosa as the incumbent president and his level of influence down the line. And yes, you brought the point up earlier about different constituencies within the ANC. I mean, what would happen to the ANC without Ramaphosa?
Well, it's not what would happen without it. It will happen without him. This issue of what happens after has been with us since the days of Mandela. What happens when Mandela goes? Well, Thabo Mbeki happened. What happens after Thabo Mbeki? Zuma happens, and then we're now with Ramaphosa. So I think if we work on the basis that the stableness of the government of national unity is dependent on Ramaphosa's presence, then I think we must work on the basis that because in a year or two he'll be at the departure lounge, therefore that GNU will also collapse. I don't think it's dependent on him. I think the ANC generally, even those who are skeptical about working with the DA, do want or do recognize that the most stable would be the one that includes the DA. But they must also accept that to an extent that the DA doesn't want to be in that coalition, or some in the ANC may become the majority that says, look, we don't want them to be with us there. Let's take a chance and work with someone else. It's likely to happen. So my view is that, look, the GNU will survive Ramaphosa unless it collapses before he goes, but that coalitions in South Africa are not going to be dependent on whether Ramaphosa is there or not. In fact, they won't even depend on the leader. They're going to depend on the outcome. The ANC doesn't want to work with the parties it's working with in a number of provinces and in a number of municipalities. They are being forced by circumstances. And I think even at the national level, circumstances will force our leaders to work together.
Well, I mean, interesting that there's been so many touch points, and I'll say conflict touch points, from the budget speech of a few months back to the issues about Nobutle in Kabani, and then, of course, the now former DA deputy minister that we've just spoken about, Andrew Whitfield, and there's so many other things, right? The Bella Bill, etc., etc. Do we get a sense, therefore, in the light of all the things you've said, that you're always going to get this verbal sparring being played out in the public spaces, but in reality, both parties do know that they are genuinely stuck with each other? So what I'm saying, therefore, take them seriously, but don't take them too seriously, because they're not really going to move from their positions of being together.
They're not going to move from their positions of being together, but I think what we need to coerce them is to understand that stability is going to be dependent on more than them tolerating each other. I argue in a column I've written today that instead of really worrying about does Zille come in, what happens to John and all of that, the idea is for them to go away, have a strategy session, say, why are we together? The president announced the following things. Can we agree on those? Let's make those things policy. So the issue of what happens to Simelane, what happens to Kabani, and all of those are important things, but policy issues are the most important things. Let us make the people at the center. The issue of poverty, of jobs, unemployment, inequality. Let's make those the real issues rather than whose bread is buttered in this particular process.
Well, I mean, it seems so obvious to me. You make the people at the center of all decisions, from issues of poverty and inequality and unemployment. If it's that obvious, why do you think that's not been done? And it hasn't been done for a good number of years now.
I don't know. I think it's because maybe the rest of the parties in the coalition don't think those things are important as long as they're in the cabinet, that the ANC is happy with there being no new strategy because it means you continue as if they still have a 50% plus one majority, and that it seems it's only the DA that is always banging on to say, but a coalition means that we all need to have a buy-in on the policies that needs to be implemented.
Maybe just the last thing for now. 1 year into the GNU, and we touched on this like a week or two ago. But it's fair to say, although we talk collaboration, we also look at parties trying to vie for being first past the post when they get the chance in the next election. So between those two major parties, who has benefited the most between being part of the GNU, the ANC or the DA?
I'm not. I don't think so. I think from a point of view, from the ANC point of view, it will be that, look, we have been able to get all the policies that had been passed before to go through, and therefore we are better off. The DA is more likely to say, look, if you look at most of the policies, they are starting to change and all of that. For me, incremental change is important, but they are both losers and the country losers because we still don't have a broad macroeconomic framework that will create jobs, that will reduce inequality, that will give us social and economic infrastructure. And that, for me, is the real issue we should be worrying about.
And we wonder, why can't we get that right? Let's leave it at that, Mbazima Shalowa. I much appreciate your time. We'll have this up as a podcast, but also feel free to tweet out your link to your column today. I'll gladly share that. Just tag myself, Ashraf Garda, and SAFM Radio. We'll gladly share that via our social media platforms as well. Lots to consider from that conversation. Thank you for your time. Right, now what we've got is you. I want to get your thoughts on the conversation we've just had about the ANC and the DA. They can't really do without each other. That's what I felt. Certainly, that's what Shalowa thinks as well. What do you think? What do you think about some of the insights that have just emerged? You can call in live now. I'll take your calls, or get your WhatsApp voice notes right after this.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, let's see if we can get to some of the WhatsApp comments as well. We've also got, and as expected, there are people who have lots to say. So here's one on Mbazima rather.
If Mbazima Shalowa wants to throw the ANC under the bus, let him do it alone, not at the cost of South Africans. We do not want this thing of the DA because the DA wants to change radical policies and to affect them negatively. We are for expropriation of land, NHI and Bella Act.
Okay, but the great question is, who are we? When you say we, who are we or who is we? I don't really know. There's another one on that, ANC versus DA.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. The big difference between the ANC and the DA is their ideologies. The ANC's ideology says us first, then the people. So the ANC feed on the gravy train, and the scraps that fall off the train are for the people and used for infrastructure. Whereas the DA are focusing on putting the people first. Irrelevant of what they say about BEE and everything like that. It's not that they're against BEE, they are against the method and the manner in which BEE is being operated by the ANC. That's the prime differences. And of course they have the stability of the country, which if you give away all the land to all the people and everything, there'd be absolutely no stability. Mark from Cape Town.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark. But you see, Mark, your point about the people is your opinion. So I hear what you're saying. The DA puts the people first. In fact, Shalowa says neither does that, right? And others may call in and say, hey, it's the ANC who definitely puts the people first. I'm saying if we have put the people first, at least for the last 15 years or 20 years, let's say from the 2010 World Cup onwards, right, 15 years or so, why are we not seeing that? Why are we not genuinely seeing it? And I don't mean just at national level, but I also mean at provincial level. In cases where we've had two parties, we've had the ANC, we've had the DA ruling over the Western Cape. Lots of things they got right there, but they also got things wrong. And the ANC, clearly, they've got some wins, but they've got many, many losses as well. Right, let's get further comments from you. And here's another, you can certainly call in. Here's another one. I don't know what this really means. All this white bashing is getting a bit much now. Come on, can't we get a break from this already? Hey, listen, I mean, I don't know whether it's white bashing. It's people who are reflecting what they think, and we effectively then amplify what they're saying, and as we amplify what you're saying. So, I mean, that's why we call the show The National Pulse. You get a good barometer of all things. Well, besides Shalowa's story, there's another barometer of what's happening in the USA. Here's comment too.
Ashraf, good afternoon, man. Flores from the beautiful Western Cape. Now, I think Elon Musk can just stay in the US. He has citizenship. What's wrong with Donald Trump? First, he wants to recruit white South Africans from South Africa, and now he wants to send a white South African born back to South Africa. No. If I'm Elon Musk, I'd rather start my own party and kick Donald Trump out like a dog. Have a good job, bye-bye.
Can you just imagine Elon Musk being the leader of a political party in the USA? It sounds far-fetched, but then Donald Trump being the leader was far-fetched, and Donald Trump being the leader again of the USA also sounded far-fetched. And you know what? It happened.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Donald Trump versus Elon Musk. I don't think so. I really like these guys. I think they're smart. I don't think Donald Trump doesn't like electric vehicles. This is his way of paying back Elon Musk for supporting him in the elections. This is about turning Tesla into the monopoly of electric vehicles and eliminating all competition for Tesla. In my opinion, thanks, Lionel Witbank.
Okay, there we are, Lionel. I'll tell you what, there's more comment. I know about it. Just further responses from you. We'll have a podcast up. Rusali normally pushes up very, very quickly, so you should never miss this show. But if you've missed that part of the interview and you want to listen again and re-listen, check it up. I think in a matter of minutes, it'll be up. We'll tweet it out. It's also on the SAFM website. And then give me your comments about Shalowa's views on DA versus ANC and why they really can't do without each other. For now, let's get the news headlines. It's 3:30.
Thank you, Ashraf, on the news headlines on SAFM. I am Wanda Lambana, and a very good afternoon. Deputy President Paul Mashatile says the national dialogue will continue to take place to build a better country. The third technical meeting of the G20 on the empowerment of women is underway at Kruger National Park in Mpumalanga, and Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says the international debt architecture needs a profound change and concrete solutions. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in Sunning-Hill has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions between Buccleuch Interchange and Rivonia Road. The N14 in Lanseria has delays just north of the R512 Malibongwe Drive exit and the N1 northbound in Midrand queuing towards New Road. In KZN, on the N3, there's a crash on the link to the N2 North at Spaghetti Junction. And in Cape Town, the N7 southbound in Milnerton has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions before Bosmansdam Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, to me, you've got Zimbabwe on your mind, I think.
I do. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Well, the Proteas beat Zimbabwe by 328 runs on day 4 of the first test in Bulawayo to claim a 1-0 series lead. Fast bowler Cohen Bosch followed up a first innings century by taking 5 for 43 as Zimbabwe were bowled out for 208 in the second innings. Now, Bosch is the 4th South African to score a century and take take 5 wickets in an innings in a test. South Africa fielded only 4 of the players who won the World Test Championship final against Australia at Lord's last month, and this match does not count towards the new championship standings. Then in women's football, it's 4 days to go until the Women's Africa Cup of Nations. Today, the spotlight is on Jermaine Seoposengwe, who will be playing her final tournament for Banyana Banyana as she'll be retiring from international football. With over 100 caps, she's been part of the national team for 15 years and has plied her trade for club football in Lithuania, Spain, Portugal, and now is in Mexico. And she says that the tag of title defenders does not put pressure on the squad. Fun fact about the Women's Africa Cup of Nations: Nigeria are the most successful side in African women's football with 9 WAFCON titles. In the meantime, ambitious and hungry, Germany's women head into the Euro 2025 in Switzerland, feeling that they're on the cusp of another era of dominance. By far the most successful side in the history of competition. 8-time winners Germany have not lifted the trophy since 2013, but a core of young players eager to honor the achievements of past generations. They are hoping of a return to the summit this summer. Meanwhile, still staying with football, Keswick Stars coach Bucks Mtombeni says that the club must avoid finding themselves in the playoffs again. This is after falling short of promotion to the Betway Premiership for a second consecutive season. In a dead rubber at Cape Town Stadium, Keswick were held to a 1-1 draw by Cape Town City, with the Orbit College already confirmed as the side earning promotion to the top flight. And Mtombeni believes that the focus must now shift to winning the Motsepe Foundation Championship outright.
This is a mini league. Any mini league is a problem. You can even take it a Roma, a team that's relegated. You brought them at the playoff. A team that defend well is the team that put themselves in the opportunity to win these things. You need not to open up, more especially when you play home. A 1 point. It's very good. You see, if you get 3 out of this, it's very, very good. The lessons I learned, I think, when you play home, you need to make sure you defend well. If you can't take 3, and then you take 1.
In Olympic news, SASCOC President Barry Hendricks has confirmed that South Africa's bid to host the 2036 Olympic Games have been put on hold. The National Olympic Body will instead shift its focus to bidding for smaller international events, including World Volleyball Championships, before preparing for a bid for the 2040 Olympic Games. Now, South Africa was among 11 countries, including Morocco and Egypt, that had expressed interest in hosting the 2036 Games, but Hendricks says that they missed the deadline to submit the necessary bid documents to the IOC.
We've not been able to get through the ministry, we've not been able to get cabinet sanction, so we're going to put that on hold for now. We can look at 2040, but then also look at other events that we need to encourage international organizations to bring the events to South Africa. For example, we've spoken to, when we were in Lausanne, to World Volleyball. They want to bring their professional league here, as well as the international championships, but also the General Assembly.
I thought there's going to be a compelling reason why they decided to look at other things. And you know, it could be finance, it could be sponsorship. I thought there was some major reason. And the reason is we
missed the deadline.
So they were slow off the tracks.
Yeah, literally. But it also shows that perhaps we're not even ready. The fact that they can miss deadlines, it just shows how not serious they were about the bid.
Sure.
Crazy.
Okay.
Well, anything's off with tennis. Third seed Jessica Pegula suffered a shock straight sets defeat in her Wimbledon opener against Italy's Elisabetta Cocciaretto, 6-2 and 6-3. It was only Cocciaretto's second win against a top 10 player. The 24-year-old has never been past the third round at Wimbledon, and her best Grand Slam performance was a run to the last 16 of last year's French Open. Perhaps, Ashraf, they forgot about the bid. Or they forgot about the date.
But then who's they? Like, who's in charge of the
SASCOC.
they? But that's the point. Then they are the leaders. I don't know what to say. That of all the reasons in the world.
I know.
You know, like when a youngster goes to school, it's like, why don't you do your homework? It's like, they can give 1,000 reasons. And often, you know, my parents were sick. I had to go to a funeral. I had the flu. It's like, I forgot.
At least they're honest. I'll have more on other sports in the next hour.
I was in another insurance company and I wasn't happy. One of my colleagues was also without insurance and she was happy. My niece is without insurance and she's happy. Then I just decided I wanted that happiness.
What was the real deal they could offer you?
870.
Every month?
Every month.
That's amazing. You're always getting something out.
Yeah.
Go to OUTsurance.co.za now for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands.
What brought you and OUTsurance together?
Let me just jump on the call with them. Let me just see what's happening. He asked a lot of things about my vehicle, my sexy vehicle over here.
Ooh.
Yeah. And to my surprise, 718 Rand I end up saving. And this awesome product called Panic Assist. 24-hour security if we need their help. Thinking I'm a father, I need to look out for my family.
Absolutely. They gave you the real deal.
It literally is the real deal.
Go to OUTsurance.co.za now for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
They all believe they will be crowned champions, but gold medallions are reserved for the best of them all. It is the incredible clash of the 12 African women's national teams. Catch all the 24 matches of the Cap Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025 on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
So after the conversation with Mbazima Shalowa, he's now tweeted his column and tagged me, and I'll get to SFM Radio to share that as well, so it gets onto their timeline. It says, DA's paw in the bottle, a tale of stalemates and knee-jerk reactions. I mean, that's one of them. And then the other one, which you need to make a note of, because this moves at a breathtaking pace. I mean, seriously. It comes from Elon Musk, who's tweeted 8 minutes ago, and he says, removal of funding for enforcement of federal contempt of court orders is the actual crux of this spending bill. This is normally aimed at removal of illegal immigrants, but obviously also enables many abuses, but also enables many other abuses of power by the president. Should this be allowed? Yes, no, there's a vote on that one there. Yeah, it does move at a breathtaking pace. Let's get to something else that should concern us, and once again, it has an impact on decisions taken in the USA, right? You may be aware that, U.S. foreign aid cuts will impact every one of us, because when I say one of us, the country and the many countries, because US aid funding on adults and child mortality may have a huge impact. Now that, of course, is the Trump administration. When they got into power, they cut the U.S. Agency for International Development. It's called USAID. And that funding provides 40% humanitarian funding around the globe. Now, there's a number of how many deaths that could impact in the next 5 years. And that number is 14 million people would die or could die because of the cut in funding. Let's find out more about it with Dr. Angelique Coetzee, the Vice Chair of the Unity Forum of Family Practitioners of South Africa. Dr. Coetzee, I appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Yes, this is a very serious development that you are talking about. And you mentioned 40 million deaths. But also, that includes more than 4.5 million children under the age of 5. This is really, really serious.
Just so that we understand it, right? Why would, and I'm just trying to look at the practicality. So there's a cut in funding globally from the new Trump administration, still fairly new. Why would that result in deaths? I'm trying to understand the value chain in terms of how one impacts the other.
Okay, this is a very good question. So your USAID and PEPFAR, that is two organizations donating money from America to the African continent, and not only to South Africa or Africa, but worldwide. So they play actually a very critical role in funding your HIV/AIDS treatments, your TB control, your maternal child health, and food security programs. Now, if that pipeline dries up, we are then looking as I've already said, an increased child mortality, especially in your under-resourced provinces. When you get your interruption in your ARV treatment for people living with HIV, those people will infect other people. And it's not to say when you go back onto your original treatment that it will again help and keep your viral load under control. So that's a serious problem. And you know, especially in South Africa, we have one of the highest HIV burdens in the world. Then if we look to reduced access to TB diagnostics and treatment, that system is already strained, so it's going to get worse. And TB also very contagious, and we're also sitting with what we called drug-resistant TB, which is going to have an impact on the lives of people, especially if you are living with HIV or any other immunity disease that brings down your immune system. And then in some areas, if we look at food insecurity, for your vulnerable people, we also rely on aid-supported nutrition programs. So those nutrition programs is also going to be affected. And we must remember that South Africa is a regional hub. So any shocks to our health system then spills over into our neighboring countries like Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Lesotho, which many of them rely on our infrastructure and cross-border support. So, yeah, this is a problem.
How is it affecting South Africa already? I mean, can you give us a sense of maybe some practical shifts you've already seen, although it's just a few months now?
Yeah, we already see that some of the HIV programs in your rural areas, your lower income areas in South Africa, because there's no money for your healthcare workers to go out and track and trace and take medication to these first people, they are now relying to go to a clinic which is maybe 30 k's away. There's a transport problem. They can get to the clinic is maybe stock out, or the clinic is not open during those hours. That the patient gets there, so it becomes a huge problem. And what it then will lead to is people just default on their treatment. So it's not only a funding crisis that we're now sitting with in South Africa, but there's a moral and public health emergency. So yeah, it is a huge problem. So if you look at Limpopo, so you ask me, the clinics treating drug-resistant TB, most of them rely on US funding on their gene expert testing. So now that's not going to happen. So if I can say we need global accountability to protect our most vulnerable people in our country, because they are the ones that's going to be severely affected with this.
I mean, I'm looking at this Lancet report and looking at some aspects. So yes, the number given already is the 14 million that you speak about, but it also claims that the USAID funding had prevented more than 90 million deaths in developing countries for a period of about 20 years, so from 2001 up to 2021. So, I mean, that's a huge number, right?
Yeah.
It gets me thinking, therefore, what then would be the South Africa plan? So we know what the problem is. It got thrust upon us very, very suddenly, and we're already cash-strapped. There's been big issues around the Department of Health in terms of funding. We know that. So what's going to happen next? What can we do?
So first of all, we need to start increase our domestic investment in health. We need to leverage our public-private partnerships, so to help us mitigate those donor withdrawals that we have seen. So we need to act on all of that. We must start to utilize our own resources and rely less on countries outside for donor funding. Yes, we do need those funding, but it should not be the sole income of that specific project that we are now seeing. We must always have a plan B. We cannot rely on a plan A. No one expected to see a cut in this huge effect that we have now seen. You know, that this crisis is driven by an estimated 83% cut in US aid-funded global health and humanitarian programs. So we need to make sure that we can be sustainable, and we need to start investing in our own country.
Okay, now, I mean, you
we need
probably
to take
use
the politics out.
I hear that you probably use the word, need 3 times. So it's a case of part of your wish list. Do you get a sense that it's actually happening? I mean, are the powers that be, the key decision makers, are they making the decisions that will effectively fill your answer, or in fact it is still very much just wish list and we need to, and nobody's actually implementing?
So it's still a wish list. So what we see is happening, yes, they are looking for donors in other countries to fill the gaps. But again, we're going to sit with the same problem if you do not go and sit around the table and say, listen, what do we need? For what programs? What is the people that we need to employ to help us take this forward? Where can we work together with other countries, with their departments, not necessarily in line of funding, but in knowledge and expertise, and how can we mitigate this to the best for our countries? So if you're going to do the same, make the same mistake that we have done and depend on other countries for their aid to come in, we're going to find ourselves maybe in 2 or 3 years from now again in the same position when those countries' money dries up. So, and then we need to start to get accountable. We need to make sure that what we do is in the best interest of our own country in terms of health and the health needs of our people. We know what is the needs. We just need to get the political will to sit and sort it out and make difficult decisions.
Okay, the politicians, as we know, are arguing every single day. You say political will, but do we have the financial clout at a time where in a depressed economy and growth rate shrinking, government is there to ask for more money via VAT increases, which didn't happen, which shows you that effectively they are battling to make ends meet as per the budget. So where would the money come from?
Well, the money should be there. It's already, if you go and sit and look at your money, the budget that's been allocated to health, with the problem that we are sitting is each and every province get their cut, and they do with their health budget what they think or deem appropriate. So it's not national that's got a say in what, for example, Gauteng need to do with their health budget. So if we go and look at that, where's all the waste and the abuse, and take responsibility and accountability and say, listen, this is really what is needed. Let's fix what is needed, and in what is given to us, in the budget that's given to us. And also maybe it's time that some of the regulations change so that National Department of Health can hold the provinces responsible for poor decision-making in those provinces around health.
Well, the question now, Dr. Angelique Coetzee, is who's listening? So thank you for your time. Vice Chair of the Unity Forum of Family Practitioners in South Africa, or of South Africa. Well, it is an important question. Who's listening? And when they listen, what do they do? Normally, the Minister of Health does listen to the show. I know that. But, I mean, in a broad question, who's listening? What is being done about it? This is the National Pulse.
Nelson Mandela once said, "There can be no greater gift than that of giving one's time and energy to helping others without expecting anything in return."
What's your Mandela Day game plan this year? Why not lace up those sneakers and hit the ground running at our annual Mandela Day Walk and Run on July 19th at the DP World Wanderers Stadium, Ilovo. You can walk 5Ks, run 10 and 21Ks, and still have enough energy to have fun. It's a whirlwind of fun and laughter, all for a fantastic cause. Every cent goes to support the excellent work of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Enter on mandeladay.com or register for the virtual race on fundnation.org/Nelson Mandela. See you there.
Got a Standard Bank business account and self-service banking? You could win up to 5,000 Rand cash every day this week in the Standard Bank Self-Service Quiz. SMS Standard Bank Self-Service to 45787 for a chance to be selected. Answer 2 easy questions about Standard Bank self-service banking to be a winner. Tune in every day this week on the Midday Link Up to see if it's you. Standard Bank. It can be. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
You're listening to the National Pulse.
Right, I certainly welcome your calls. By the way, when we heard about the Israel-Iran war, that didn't last very long, and whether it's actually done already is open to debate. But when all that started, besides other issues that you may have in terms of your ideological bent, the one thing that every one of us in South Africa had in common was like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to the fuel price? Well, we have now news. You better fill up tonight, I understand, because things will all change after midnight today, right? So the numbers are significant. Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, fuel prices will see a hike of between 52 and 55 cents per litre for 95 and 93 petrol, and an increase of between 82 and 84 cents per litre for diesel. Okay, is it Iran versus Israel, or is it something else? Robert Marke, Director of Fuel Pricing at the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. Much appreciate your time, Robert. It's been a while. Good to connect with us. You're on the National Pulse.
Afternoon, Ashraf and the listeners.
Okay, so there's been a trend, I think, for a better part of a year or so, that it's been stable or downward. There's hardly been much increases. I mean, you can tell me when. Suddenly we've got this increase. Is it because of that, Israel versus Iran?
Yeah, firstly, you're quite correct, Ashraf, because from June last year to June this year, on average, the fuel price actually dropped by more than 2 rand. Quite correctly, the conflict in Israel, between Israel and Iran, actually led the oil price to jump. There was a huge jump, and that actually affected the average for the month because it pushed it up. And as a result, it affected the pump prices in South Africa and everywhere else.
Okay, so what happens now? I mean, so we see the immediate difference, right? But also that war has now effectively ended. And I know it's very volatile, the region's volatile. Assuming it sustained itself as ending, what happens next?
Yeah, that's true. The last few days, even before we adjusted the prices, we saw that average was also now trying to come down as well, because of the prices going down. So if there was no ceasefire, these changes might have been higher, Ashraf. So we have seen towards the end of last week that the prices are starting to go down. There was an improvement. So hopefully it will be sustained for the remainder of this month, and then we can see good news at the end of the month.
Is there anything else we need to know? Just maybe an insight into, certainly from a price structure point of view, how that is managed in South Africa to insulate against rapid changes and global threats?
Well, Ashraf, at the moment, we don't necessarily have any mechanism that can insulate us against those changes in the international market, mainly because we don't have our own oil. We don't keep a lot of storage where we can then use the fuel in the storage tank to cushion the prices. These are things that are being debated as to whether South Africa should have its own strategic and commercial stock, and how much in terms of quantities and so on. But at the moment, we don't have. I also wanted to, Ashraf, if you allow me, to talk about issues around Western Cape. If you have seen our statement, we are saying the LP gas in the Western Cape is going to increase by 190 cents per kilogram, even though it's decreasing everywhere else by 57 cents per kilogram. And the reason for that, Ashraf, is because the terminal in Saldanha Bay in Western Cape is much smaller than the one in Richards Bay. And we are using the one in Richards Bay to determine our prices. The one in Richards Bay is over 20,000 tons of LPG. And the one in Saldanha is a quarter of that, about 500. So what happens is the guys in Cape Town have been paying a surcharge or a surplus on their LP gas over the years. And so we did an investigation that started in January last year and ended in February this year. And we realized that on average, they are paying over 14 cents in addition to the price that is set by the department.
Oh my!
So we
wow.
have now then. We have now then went to the minister and approved that for it's an interim intervention for 24 months until that terminal, because they are busy with the expansion of that terminal to bring it to the same size as Richards Bay. Until that process is finalized, they will be having this 14% as part of the LP gas price for Western Cape alone.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. So for now, prices go up, and hopefully it goes down sometime soon. Robert Marke, Director of Fuel Pricing at the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. It all happens tonight. I expect a queue at the filling stations, right? But let's get your thoughts after this.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, there's certainly lots more comment from some of the biggest issues. Donald Trump, USAID, Imbazima Shalowa, ANC-DA. Here's one on USAID.
Ashraf, let's be honest and practical. At this moment, there's no crisis with the cut of funding of anything from America and South Africa. The people that are always saying that they're lying. I'm from rural area. I see when people get a message on their phones to come and collect their medicines. This is just a pure lie. In fact, people want to sell South Africa to the highest bidder, America. You must stop lying here.
What does it mean, sell it to the highest bidder? I think maybe more explanation would be needed on that. Right, here's another comment on Imbazima Shalowa's conversation with me. That's a podcast, you can listen to that too.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Listening to Imbazima Shalowa, to me, it's just like listening to Jacob Zuma. People who were once in power and had the opportunity to make some change, but decided to do what the ANC does best, and now they are outside criticizing like they'll do something better. Maybe we should get another analyst, or we should come and get him to tell us what he did better when he was in power.
In fact, we've had those conversations with him on another occasion, so you don't mix the two. But listen, it's not a case of getting another analyst. That's his view. And we often do get other analysts, and we often get different views every single day or every single week on the show. So that's the world according to Shalowa. We may well get a world according to somebody else, and sooner than you may think. For now, let's get to know about the world. It's the news at 4.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories at 4. The MK party heavily divided in Parliament and national dialogue to continue without the DA. For SAFM News, I am Ondilambana, and a very good afternoon. The MK party caucus in the National Assembly is heavily divided as some MPs have written to the party president calling for the removal of Chief Whip Colleen Makhubele, accusing her of unilateral and undemocratic decisions. The MPs have accused ideological betrayal, citing her the stance she took on Israel. In a letter, some MPs further accuse Makhubele of descending the caucus into a state of dysfunction. The MPs demand the removal of Makhubele after she and caucus leader Dr. John Hlophe removed Ntlamulo Ndlela from the whippery of the party. Meanwhile, Hlophe has also written to party president Jacob Zuma complaining about the conduct of Ntlamulo Ndlela and Duduzile Zuma Sambudla as disruptive and not respecting the authority of the chief whip. Deputy President Paul Mashatile says the national dialogue will continue to take place to build a better country. This after the ANC's biggest government, National Unity Partner, the DA, announced that they will not participate in the national dialogue over the weekend in retaliation to the axing of DA MP and Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Andrew Whitfield, by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Mashatile was speaking during the Clean Cities and Towns Integrated Service Delivery Program in Welkom. Mashatile stressed that the national dialogue is not for political parties but for the betterment of the people.
The national dialogue is going to proceed. As we know, we've got a convention on the 15th of August, so we are proceeding because the national dialogue is not about political parties. National dialogue is for the people. We want to involve the people, as many as possible in the country. We'll be going out to different wards, engaging people, talking to them, because at the end of the day, we want to come from that dialogue and say, this is the kind of South Africa we want to continue to build together.
DA National spokesperson Karabo Khachau says the composition of the independent panel said to have selected chairpersons of the Sector Education and Training Authorities boards shows that it was not an independent panel. This after Khachau opened a case of fraud against Higher Education and Training Minister Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane. The DA believes that Nkabane lied to Parliament with regards to the composition of the independent panel. This follows a public outcry about the politically linked board chair appointments, which the minister has since withdrawn. Then the focus shifted to who served on the panel, which turned out to be individuals who are or had been connected with the department. Khachau explains.
Here to lay criminal charges against Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane for blatantly misleading Parliament and by extension lying to the Republic of South Africa. When you tell Parliament and the people of South Africa that a panel that you used to advise you on the appointment of SETA board chairpersons is independent, it means it should be independent. Not that it should be packed with people from your own department who are already under the payroll of the state, not people who are political appointees in your office. That is not independence at all.
The third technical meeting of the G20 on the empowerment of women is underway at Kruger National Park in Mpumalanga. It is aimed at promoting women's participation in the economy and their representation in leadership, governance and the decision-making. It is also aimed at enhancing women's ownership and control. Several G20 member states, along with invited countries, are participating in the four-day engagement, which will conclude on Friday. Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities Minister Sindisiwe Chikunga says women's contribution is hardly recognized.
The K economy is that economy that happens and is mainly done by women at home, taking care of children, taking care of sick family members, washing dishes, cleaning the house, etc., etc. It contributes a lot in the normal economy. You will not be here if there is no one who ensures that there is food in the house is clean, your dresses are ironed and washed. And therefore, behind this main economy, there is the care economy that is not recognized.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says the international debt architecture needs a profound change and concrete solutions. In his keynote address at the second day of the fourth International Conference on Financing, Sanchez shared several proposals he said will ensure that the Sustainable Development Goal is reached. He emphasized that the core problems need to be addressed.
We need to address the structural problems that prevent many countries from stabilizing their debt while investing in their future. In this regard, I would like to highlight and support a proposal advocated by the Jubilee Commission, a multilateral fund that enables countries to buy back their own debt at a discount on secondary markets before it falls into the hands of vulture funds.
Recapping the top story, the MK party caucus in the National Assembly is heavily divided. Some MPs have written to the party president calling for the removal of Chief Whip Colleen Makhubele, accusing her of unilateral and undemocratic decisions. I'm Wandela Mbana for SFM News Headlines at 4:30.
In sports this hour, Chituka to make Test debut for box against Italy, and Pele raring to go in Europe following injury recovery. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 northbound in Midrand has a crash before New Road. The N14 in Lanseria has delays just north of the R512 Malibongwe Drive exit, and on the R21 southbound in Tembisa, roadworks reported with traffic restrictions south of the Olifantsfontein Road junction. In KZN, the N3 westbound, a stationary vehicle before Hammersdale exit. The N2 southbound is slow moving through the construction site at Sabaya, and on the N2 southbound, a crash reported on the ramp to the N3 westbound carriageway at Spaghetti Junction. The ramp's closed and you are to expect delays and diversions. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound slow moving towards Krombom Road. The N1 outbound has a stationary vehicle reported on Plattekloof Hill, and the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound has a stationary vehicle before Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So much more to come on the National Pulse. You know, I did say this yesterday, right? And I probably have to say it again today. And I said I could do a whole series of just conversations with my Uber driver. So, you know, yesterday I gave the example of this Uber driver who didn't believe that I was that person that he listens to on the National Pulse every single day. That was Alex, right? Today I took another Uber and so this guy, fascinating story. He's from Uganda and he tried to move to South Africa because an agent had set up a deal for him to play professional football in this country, and then he didn't quite work out. So at the moment, he's still on the lookout for a professional club. I have no idea how good he is. He's a left back. But bottom line, for now, he's an Uber driver. And these are the type of conversations I'm having with people. And of course, we spoke about Uganda and the fact that the president of that country wants to stick around for another term of office, doesn't stop 80 years and not retiring at all. So there we are. Maybe more conversations with an Uber driver tomorrow when I come across them, right? Let's get to other conversations that are really important in our country. The South Africa's Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, led the Clean Cities and Towns campaign in Welkom in the Free State. The SABC News reporter, Aphumelele Mdladlani, joins me on the line so that we can find out more what actually happened. Appreciate your time and thanks for connecting with us on the National Pulse.
Must indicate that the initiative of this cleaning campaign is in an effort to improve the service delivery was welcomed by the residents of Machabeng municipality. However, they stressed the issue of, job opportunities amongst others, as we do know that Machabeng is surrounded by mining areas that remain closed. Of course, the campaign started by Paul Mashatile visiting a helium gas plant where we know that it's of course operational, but now they were indicating that it will be creating more job opportunities in trying to curb, the lack of jobs within the Machabeng municipality. And was also taken to a treatment plant that is supposed to be operational, but because of the challenges that are faced by the municipality, especially of electricity, those are the interventions that we also indicated that they're supposed to be immediate to try to improve the service delivery, because we do know that Machabeng municipality has been placed under administration recently. There's a financial recovery plan. There's government intervention, therefore, to oversee its administration. It's owing Water Board entity about 6 billion rand. But one other thing that have been standing that we managed to ask, Deputy President, is with regard to the national dialogue, where he did say that this is for the people of South Africa, and therefore it will continue. It's not about any political party. So the withdrawal of the DA does not threaten, this action that they want to partake. And also, when asked about the issue of the budget votes, they were saying that they are in full support of all the departmental budget votes. They won't be deterred by also the withdrawal, or rather the threat by the DA, when they said they won't be supporting those budget votes in Parliament.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the Deputy President. I mean, he went to a region and there are just so many areas where people are disgruntled with poor service delivery. So even the issue of leading the clean-up or the Clean Cities and Towns campaign in Welkom suggests there's been problems ongoing in that region already. How is his visit received by the people, and how much confidence do they give to him in getting things right?
Well, surprisingly, he was well received by the people, and it's something that we were curious to see. Well, how is it going to turn, given that there's been a series of violent protests? Therefore, we do know that the mayor not long ago was on step aside in 2 months in office, and he's been up and running, started with the cleaning campaign before it was even, initiated here in the Free State, because Mathabeng has become the first town or the municipality to initiate this campaign. However, the mood was fine, but people are still saying job opportunities. They want these mining areas that are surrounding the municipality to be operational. They want to be prioritized when it comes to, placement of jobs. But also they are calling for consistency. They are saying this initiative of cleaning campaign should be consistent, because it will then drive them, or rather motivate them also, not to do, acts like your dumping site within the municipality, and they will also be motivated to pay their rates and their rate services.
Well, thanks for enlightening us on that. Appreciate your time. That's Aphumelele Mdladlani, the SABC News reporter, covering the story of the Deputy President Paul Mashatile, part of that Clean Cities and Towns campaign in the Free State region. Now, of course, naturally, he was going to be asked about many other things, including the issue of the DA and a potential motion of no confidence against the president. This is what he said.
The GNU is going to continue. We're going to vote for all budgets. If the DA doesn't vote for any budget, that's their problem, because the budget is not an instrument of a minister. The budget is for the nation. So if there's a minister of the DA, that's not their budget. That budget is to help the people. So we, as the ANC, will vote for all budgets, because we want this country to work. We want things to proceed. So if they don't vote for any budget, that's their business. We will vote for all budgets, because our people want us to fix the roads. They want water. They want electricity. They want us to grow the economy, employ people. And that's what the budget is all about. So we are proceeding.
And the threats to table a motion of no confidence against the president?
We will be ready to defeat it.
There we are. I wonder what you make of that. And interesting, that point about the budgets. We will support all budgets. So here's an interesting one from a DA perspective. If they don't support budgets of leaders or ministers who they deem as corrupt, or they're fingering them out as potentially being corrupt, right? And if that continues, I mean, there are ways around it, as we've seen with the actual budget vote itself, right? And if that continues, then more and more the DA could be seen on the periphery, and it makes it easier for the ANC to do without them. Can you see the conundrum? And I know it's complicated, because it really is. That's why I need to talk to you. You're on the pulse. Let's hear you next. Okay, I'll tell you what to do. Let's get to some of the callers before we say next. So lots of comments, I know, on some of the issues we've been speaking about. Trump, Elon Musk, Shalowa on his pronouncements regarding the ANC and the DA. Mike and Newlands, you've got a thought. Hi.
Hello, Ashraf. I have, yes, sparked by your caller about HIV, but also brought to my attention by this morning on Tula Sizwe's show about the poisoned water that has been unclean water in the JoJo tanks at our rural schools. And it takes me back to this report that has just come out, which we're not allowed to see. You'll remember back when the Pretoria Girls High, we had this racism claim, which turned out to be completely false.
Yeah.
And we had the infamous comment of Steve Mabona, the spokesman for the Gauteng Education Department, said, we will act against racism even if there's no tangible evidence. Well, he actually did. He commissioned an attorney, a guy called Mr. Mladlamba, to try and find racism in the Pretoria school. It cost us 500,000 rand, R500,000, and he found that there was absolutely no racism. You might even remember that President Thabo Mbeki got involved, and he said, I quote him, for some reason it seems the Gauteng Education Department is determined to smear the school with a charge of racism. And let me just quickly share the charges with you. The charge one, they've now found, because they could spent all this money, they found that the headmistress's husband is guilty of pruning the roses for free, because he wanted just to help the school gardens to make them look nice, and this apparently was a broken rule. So she was found guilty of allowing him to do this. The second charge was the fact that the human resources or accountant was improperly hired. It turns out that the school body, in fact, hired him and approved it, so she can't be guilty of that, but she is guilty according to this fool. And then finally, this is a charge I love. Because he couldn't fit all the stuff in his car to work in the garden to make it look beautiful, which he was doing for free, he used the bakkie. And apparently she is now guilty of allowing him to take the bakkie to go to Builder's Warehouse to pick up the tools and the stuff he needs. And it turns out the bakkie doesn't even belong to the Department of Education in Gauteng. It belongs to the school.
Well,
now, this cost us 500,000 rand, Ashraf, and I'm just simply putting it out there. We've got starving children. We've got the worst education in the world, and we are allowing this to go on. And what happens to these black kids? These white girls, 12 of them, have had their lives taken apart, Ashraf. There's been no repercussions to these black children, and the black children I feel sorry for even more, because they are now going to think this is the way it works in the real world. Right? But when they leave school, Ashraf, what are they going to be faced
I hear you, and I think, yes, it was such a complex, I mean, it's a complete botch up. And the last part, your chuckle around the husband of the headmistress, I must tell you, I had the same chuckle when I heard it or read about it, and then I quickly checked up whether it's April the 1st today, and it's clearly not. It's July the 1st. But yeah, it is the most ridiculous story I've heard. And I think maybe an explanation on that in terms of what they did and how they found him guilty and what context we need to find out about. So, Mike, thank you for that. Let's get to some further comments. No question, not unexpected, the Shalowa story, the Shalowa Express has certainly picked up speed here in his conversation about the ANC versus the DA.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, Lennon Khwedi. I agree 125% with Mbazimash Lua's analysis that the DA is going nowhere. They will be barking like the dog that used to bark even when they see a vehicle, the wheel of a vehicle spinning, they bark on that wheel. So that's what the DA is doing. And as for Elon Musk, I think Donald Trump is giving him the taste of his medicine, like Floyd Shivambu. Elon Musk must come and ask from Floyd Shivambu what happened to him at the MKP. Lennon.
What's the chances of Elon Musk becoming a politician in South Africa? I'm not talking of USA, I'm saying in South Africa. This world's crazy, I promise you that. Okay, let's get another comment that's important, I think.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, we must do away with this two-thirds majority. The one who has got the highest votes must govern. Otherwise, these coalitions and whatever, and the governments of national unity, they are not working. They are not working for us at all. Norman from Brixton.
Thanks for that, Norman. I'm not too sure if I understand you. Two-thirds majority would only be to change the constitution, for example. And then, yes, maybe there are certain clauses like removing the president. But in general, passing budgets, making decisions, it's really a 50% plus one, which is basically what we have right now anyway. Okay, that's one issue. There's another issue, and when you find out that officials from the city of Tshwane now being arrested for the theft of transformers in Lodium in Pretoria, goodness man, we have to find out why. What happened next?
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, let's get to this story. 3 officials then from the city of Tshwane municipality, they believed to be part of a syndicate, we understand. They've been arrested for stealing a transformer at a substation. So let's find out more about it with Dimakatso Nebuhuli, who's the SAPS spokesperson. Appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Thank you also for affording me this opportunity.
Well, it's a pleasure, but on a bad news day, I would think, isn't it? What has happened? What has happened here?
Yeah, with this case, what is happening here? This case, actually, the investigation started last year around November, whereby about 11 suspects were arrested after a transformer worth about 7 million rand was stolen at Lodium substation. But after investigation, 10 of them who were subcontractors, they were released due to a lack of evidence. But one of them remained behind bars, who was actually the employer of the city of Tshwane, and his case has been ongoing. He's been appearing before court. He was even at court yesterday at Pretoria Central. The case was postponed to the 8th of August. But after a thorough investigation by our organized crime, the 3 employees who were arrested today, they were also linked following thorough investigations, and they were arrested today at their work-off place. They are also linked to that theft of essential infrastructure that is related to that case of Lodium last year, November.
And tell us more, when we say essential infrastructure, I mean, do you have more detail about it? What did they actually do?
Yes, when we say essential infrastructure, it involves your transformers, your cables, all those things related to electricity and all that. So these people, they are actually employees of City of Tshwane. They work at substations. So what they do, they are modus operandi. When they are given these transformers to go and install at the places, at the locations and wherever, what they do, they will steal 1 or 2 and they sell it at the black market, and then the municipality will be sitting with a shortage of transformers. And you can see that this has a detrimental impact on our economy. As you know, that essential infrastructure is one of the major things that the economy of South Africa depends upon it. So that is why also as the police, we are taking these cases very serious, and you can see these cases are even investigated by our organized crime, because this is a syndicate. It is not just your normal, petty crime. It's a syndicate because there has to be a buyer. And the investigation also, as it's going to be, it's continuing. The investigation is continuing, and we are expecting more arrests, as we are also following up in terms of who's the buyer of these transformers, and after they buy them, what do they do with them?
I understand. I mean, there's, in terms of the more arrests, there's some big names in either with the buyer or the city of Tshwane that could well be implicated. I mean, can you confirm that?
Yes, there is someone who has been identified as the buyer, and we are also expecting his arrest soon.
And within the council, within the city, these unnamed people at the moment?
The person at the moment is not an employee. The person who buys the transformers is not an employee, has not been identified as an employee. It's someone who is identified as a business person, if I can put it that way.
I understand. So what happens next in terms of court appearance?
They will be appearing tomorrow. They are expected to appear tomorrow at Pretoria Central Magistrates Court. They will be charged with theft of essential infrastructure, and then, as I have already indicated, the investigations are ongoing.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Dimakatso Nebuhuli, appreciate your time. SAPS spokesperson. That's the story. 20 officials arrested for the theft of transformers. So this is like big-scale theft. When you think about a transformer and you wonder what happens to substations and why there's no lights or electricity, that is the level of theft that takes place in our country. And I think the point has been made often enough now that cannot be allowed to continue, or can it? This is the National Pulse.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
I was wondering when somebody may call in about the infighting within the MK party. Well, Mboneni in Annandale, you're the first to talk about it. Go for it.
Yes, very good afternoon, Asaf and listeners of SAFM.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Firstly, before I just say what I want to, I would like to congratulate you. You are a legend. You are dedicated and determined. The reason I'm saying this, yesterday around 11 minutes to 6, there's a guy who was saying that you don't give us time and all. But I want to tell you that you are very disciplined on the microphone. You explain everything to details. The radio is there for us to inform us and also to teach us. So the point I want to make...
Okay, first of all, you're very kind. I only sound and act as good as I am with my entire team. So as you know, it's Keys, Temba, Vusani that makes up the team, the four of us. But yes, much appreciated. And you're right, that ultimately it's a fast-paced drive time show, so we can't have 1 hour talk shows, which is what the suggestion was made, and give the callers all the calls. And it's short and sharp. It is the nature of it, yeah.
Yeah. So the point I want to make, Ashraf, thank you very much, is the fact that the issue of Collins and the issue of the expelled former president of ANC, Jacob Zuma, now to say that Duduzane and Samulo, they are taking party to the left-hand side. It has been happening there. And now he just realized that he's losing the focus of the party, and the party is not going anywhere, because all those bad people who went there are those who were corrupt people that they are surrounding him. And I want to tell you for the fact that there are so many things that is coming out in that party. And now, though sometimes I'm saying that Floyd is not going anywhere, but I think at this stage, there are so many things that is coming out of the back now that we'll hear from that party. And that party, as we see now, it has been analyzed in a very different way, in a different perspective by analysts. So all I'm saying is that Colin, she will never last there. And I think the other person that is coming out there, that I'm very sure because he was on the side of Floyd, it will be Eric Nkovani.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We're going to make a note.
Ashraf.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind words. There you are. Two names mentioned by Mboneni saying, hey, they're going to be out of the MK party soon. It's the nature of how the party operates. Les in the Western Cape. Let's talk about the nature of the GNU. Les, hi.
Quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me talk about that one for the GNU.
Yeah.
The GNU here in South Africa, as has been formed, have got only 3 parties that are more active. It's the ANC, DA, and the Freedom Front Plus. The rest, if you can check those parties, they are serving the interests of the ANC. And then if they are serving the interests of the ANC, now they are dependent to ANC for cabinet post. As they're power hungry for those who are representative of the people, and those who are representative of the people of the within the GNU. There are those people who divide the voters from the crowd. And then for the next coming election, there's going to be the bad effect for the next coming election, because those are serving the ANC, which means now they are no longer going to have values at the ground because they are serving the interests of the
Okay,
ANC.
I hear that. Let's see if, in fact, the voters agree. I think, look, this is a fundamental issue. Thanks for that, Les. That cropped up around the period before the last election, where all the parties got votes on the basis of a certain mandate. They had a manifesto, all of them, and said, we will do this, we will never do that. Come election time, 40% plus was all the ANC could get. Those rules changed. So parties who said they will never talk to so-and-so, well, they're all talking and they're all chummies now. I do think, however, that maybe the point of departure, I don't think they're actually serving the ANC. I think they all realize, the small parties, they have got a window to impress you and me. So talk about window shopping as opposed to window dressing. Well, they're in the shop window. They have a chance to convince us about what they're doing, and some of them are doing that anyway. Here's the news headlines. It's just gone 4:30.
For the news headlines, the MK Party caucus in the National Assembly is heavily divided as some MPs have written to the party president calling for the removal of Chief Whip Colleen Makhubele, accusing her of unilateral and undemocratic decisions. Researcher Lisa Vetten has been accused of presenting an analysis that is sympathetic towards the complainant in South Africa's first ever formal probe into allegations of sexual harassment in the judiciary. And Israeli planes and tanks have continued to attack areas of North and South Gaza, reportedly destroying homes and prompting thousands of residents to flee. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in Midrand slow moving towards Buccleuch interchange, and the N3 northbound has a crash reported at Buccleuch interchange. In KZN, the N2 northbound slow moving towards the Bayer exit, the N3 westbound has a stationary vehicle before Hammersdale exit. In Cape Town, Marine Drive northbound in Tableview queuing towards Dolphin Beach, and the M5 southbound slow moving towards Crombom Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
All right, so the Springboks were in action in that landslide victory at the end of the day against the Barbarians. They've got what? Who they've got next? They got the Italians.
Italy, yeah. Vincent Chituka will make his test debut in a strong side named by Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus for Saturday's Castle Lager incoming series opener against Italy in Pretoria. The side features 13 players from that recent win over the Barbarians. In the absence of Siya Kolisi, Jesse Kriel will become the 67th Bok captain in test history, and fit again, Eben Etzebeth will be the vice captain. Damian Willemse is also back in the squad after injuries and suspension that kept him out of the World Cup final. In cricket, South Africa's captain Keshav Maharaj says that there's still room for improvement. This is despite the Proteas cruising to a dominant 328-run win over Zimbabwe in the first test. The result gives the Proteas a 1-0 lead in the two-match series, but Maharaj says that the team is focused on tightening a few areas ahead of the second test.
Where we can be a lot better, obviously starting up front, we can, in trying conditions we can be a little bit more sort of cautious in certain aspects, but I think also with the ball we can be a little bit more tidy in terms of not bowling too many bad balls, and I think in the second innings of our batting, I think we could have been a little bit more ruthless and not give too many soft dismissals away because...
Moving on to athletics, former South African 400-meter champion Lat Pillay is preparing for his upcoming trip to Italy on the 15th of July following his recovery from a short injury layoff. The University of Johannesburg accounting student is also set to represent the University Sports South Africa team at the World Student Games in Germany from the 16th to the 27th of July. Pillay says that he's feeling fit and ready to resume his season as he says his sides are competing at his second World Senior Championships in Tokyo, Japan later this year.
So I have Poch now this weekend, just a nice opener, get the body back to racing. Then I'll go to Italy next month. I have a race on the 15th in Brescia. And then from there I'll jump over to World Students in Germany. And then, looking to go hard at that one.
Meanwhile, renowned South African middle distance coach Samuel Sebeng has revealed that financial limitations are preventing him from accompanying star athlete Prudence Khodiso. Just last week, Khodiso broke the 800-meter course record at the Ostrava Golden Spike with a time of 1 minute and 57.16 seconds to win her heat, and will again be in action at the Diamond League event in USA on the 5th of July. But Sebeng is still stranded back home, and here he is just explaining that without financial support for flights, accommodation and food, he's unable to join Sokhodiso in a camp abroad.
Yeah, from our side, we're talking, come on, when you talk about the support, we're talking the camp, we're talking, it costing, paying the flight ticket, the accommodation, we're talking food, there's a lot that we can talk about it because, for me to leave home to travel, come on, I have a family as well, so it will require so much, any support from us. Yes, we see the wonders that are happening, but obviously the wonders comes with, with a lot, to maintain that. So from us, being honest with you, we're taking the financial support where we know, she can be able to pay for the flight for the coach. She can be able to, come on, we're talking food, we're talking paying with accommodation, for us to, to really attend, because, mentioning about Ostrava, it's cold in South Africa, but it forced us to say, go to Stockholm, don't come back, stay, remain where obviously was saying alone. What we can do is listen in the program, me talking after the, after the fashion, how was the fashion? Sometimes she started to take time, she just ran. So obviously that requires financial.
It's quite unfortunate that her coach, Sebeng, can't travel with her, because I can only imagine there's a lot of reasons why it would do well for her, even though she's already doing well without the coach traveling. But I mean, the importance of having your coach there as an athlete running, race day strategy and adjustments, the warm-up and recovery suspensions, just looking out for injuries, emotional and mental support. But I think for me, I just find it very interesting that she's either way made it work for herself.
Well, I mean, good that she has, but I mean, I can only relate to this. Can you imagine me hosting a talk show without a producer?
Sure.
Can't be. The question is, like, when you're talking about elite athletes, these are not like, people still in school where they're just showing potential. Again, going back to, you want to bid and you didn't bid for the Commonwealth Games. How do you get to that situation where the athlete support, there's a big hole in that support? Because I mean, this is an example of that.
True, absolutely. I think SASCOC needs to somehow try to help out. But anything's off with motorsport. Cadillac principal Graham Loudon says that Formula One's newest team have limitless ambition and plenty of funds, but every expectation of being lost when they debut next season. The General Motors brand secured approval in March after a 764-day entry process to become the sport's 11th team, and are racing against time to be ready. Testing starts in Barcelona, and that's on the 26th of January, with free practice for the 2026 season opener in Melbourne on the 6th of March, and no drivers are signed as yet. This is despite regular reports of familiar names set to join and the usual suspects in the frame, but the focus is on more fundamental issues. I'll have more on other sports in the next hour.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195, and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
A stage awaits. Not for applause, but for possibility. For over 40 years, Standard Bank has championed the arts. And at the National Arts Festival, we don't just watch talent rise, we help grow it. Through our Standard Bank Young Artist Winners, raw voices find power, unseen stories take the spotlight, and what begins as a dream grows into a legacy. Join us in Makhanda for the festival. Standard Bank, proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The Teranga Lionesses know the importance of a win in their WAFCON opener. However, the Congolese also have their undivided attention on 3 points. This is the Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. Do not miss out on Senegal versus Democratic Republic of Congo this Sunday, 6 July at 3:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport DTT Channel 4. Then at 4 p.m. on S3 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This business feature is sponsored by CFI, an authorized financial services provider, a global leader in online trading, now available in South Africa. Visit cfi.trade today.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Let's get to those numbers, as always, with Makwe Masilela, who is the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, we got news, as always, local and global. But before that, you've got an important annual result that you want to share.
Yes, Ashraf, afternoon to you and to your listeners. These are the owners of Molet Rates and Molet Leboakromo. And given their exposure to the middle to lower LSM markets, it's not surprising to see their decent performance. Managed to increase revenue by 6.4%, profits at headline earnings per share up 29.5%, and dividend per share up 11%. Ashraf, the second quarter was not a bad quarter. The all shares up almost 8.2%. And this because of signs of easing trade tensions and expectations of Fed rate cuts boosted sentiment, and we've seen China's manufacturing activity rebounding in June, according to a private survey that itself suggesting relief after a trade or truce with the US, and the Tego trade in stock is back. That is, the Trump always chickens out will be re-examined in the next 8 days when the tariff process ends, and the European Central Bank managed to reach the inflation target, a positive for the euro as a currency, and we've seen the rand touching 2025 record low, strengthening to around 1757 at some point during the session. Also encouraging is that our June new vehicle sales jumped 18.7%, and our manufacturing sector had the second highest reading, that is sitting at 48.5, still below 50 this year after March readings. And oil prices are slightly higher as traders await OPEC Plus meeting with expectations of an output increase, also keeping an eye on trade deals. We see Brent crude is up 0.3% at $66 a barrel, and safe haven demand is back amid uncertainty over U.S. trade negotiations, while a weaker dollar provided additional support. Gold is up 1.4% at 3,348. Platinum is down 0.5% at 1,348. Ashraf, global stocks are mixed, and that's ahead of a vote over Trump's landmark tax cut and spending bill, with the JSE up 0.4%, and we've managed to see the rand firming 0.8% against the US dollar, now sitting at 17.60, 24.19 against the pound, and 20.77 against the euro.
Right, we got all those numbers. Thanks for that, Mark. We're good to connect with you. We'll do it again tomorrow. And it means we're now building up to 6 to 7, 1 hour of Jimmy Moyaha with his SFM market update.
Hi, I'm Lewis Hamilton. Victory demands everything, but the journey is never solo. My team carves the way, data and innovation are my compass. This is how today's champions are made.
Trade like a champion with CFI. Access over 15,000 instruments, advanced trading tools, 24/7 support, and superior trading services. Visit cfi.trade today. CFI Financial Markets LLC is a Category 1 licensed broker by the UAE Securities and Commodities Authority. Trading involves high risk.
CFI, empower yourself.
Thank you for tuning in to today's business feature, proudly sponsored by CFI, a leading trading app now available in South Africa. Download it now. Visit cfi.trade today.
You're listening to the National Pulse.
Okay, so what we still have to do is we've got we're going to get response from the ANC regarding some of the goings on of the last few days. So we'll chat to the ANC's representative coming up after the news, 5:30 maybe thereabouts. Looking forward to that conversation. But let's get to another issue that is so current, right? So we know we touched on it yesterday with intention. The DA now they formally laid a fraud charge against the Higher Education Minister, Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane, at the Cape Town Central Police Station. They, as part of that charge, they're accusing her of misleading Parliament over the appointment of SETA board chairpersons, which, as you now know, of course, she then, under pressure, later reversed, right? So we've picked out some clips, not all, from the DA's Federal Council chairperson, Helen Zille, when she had a Q&A with reporters outside the court. And first things first, she made the point of explaining the rationale behind the DA laying these charges.
We're here today for the simple reason that President Ramaphosa refuses to be as good as his word and act against corruption, act against criminality in our parliament. Those kinds of actions go unchecked, whereas what President Ramaphosa perceives as a slight, which is a deputy minister not asking him permission to go on a private trip that he didn't have to ask permission for, that is punished in the most severe terms. But serious fraud and the misleading of Parliament is somehow condoned by President Ramaphosa's government. That is an enormous double standard, and that shows you that the ANC isn't at all interested in combating corruption. This matter concerns Minister Nkabane, the Minister of Higher Education. She announced certain appointments to the SETA boards, the Sector Education and Training Authorities, which are crucially important in the higher education sector of South Africa. Our colleague Karabo Khachal then went and did an entire table of everybody who was appointed and discovered, lo and behold, that there were a whole lot of deployed ANC cadres. So the next question, obviously, was to ask how were they selected? And the minister said it was by an independent board of experts. Now, when we dug a little bit further and found out who these experts were, 3 out of the 6 were employees of the minister in her own department, and several others were deployed ANC cadres from various positions, and I have them listed here. So far from being independent people who had come in as experts to make the appointments, we had the minister's chief of staff, we had a chief director for the SETAs, accountable to the minister, and we had the director of corporate services, who's very close to the minister. So she put 3 people who worked for her and 2 others, one of whom denied that that was his job afterwards, into choosing these critical roles for people who administer many tens of millions, supposedly in service of higher education in our country.
Okay, so there we are from Helen Zille, but that's not all. She then made the point of making a comparison between South Africa now and apartheid South Africa, but it may not be what you think it is.
There are several precedents to this in South Africa's history, both during our democracy and before our democracy. Before our democracy, you will remember the information scandal. Most of you weren't born yet, but I was in your shoes because I was a journalist in Parliament covering the information scandal. And when it turned out that Connie Mulder, who was a minister then, had lied to Parliament, he was forced to resign. And when that lie could be linked to John Vorster, who was the president, the prime minister at that time, we had a change of constitution in the meantime, of course, he was forced to resign as well from the presidency of the country. So it is very important to understand that even under apartheid, these infringements were considered so grave that a president and a minister of state were forced to resign because of a lie they committed to Parliament or even only knew had been made to Parliament. Tony Yengeni was found guilty of fraud for misleading Parliament, and that is where the precedent of a fraud contravention comes from. Tony Yengeni received a very high punishment. So even under Thabo Mbeki and others, lying to Parliament was not tolerated and should not be tolerated now. It is very important to understand that we have to, as the official opposition who's now part of government, that it's clear we have to continue our role as opposition in order to hold the ANC and the president accountable.
You sometimes think you can't cope. Not can't cope as in life. Can't cope with the news cycle, with the rapid flow of information that happens virtually every hour. There's been a story now of the MK Party's spokesperson in Lamulo, right? That he's been removed as part of the whippery, the MK team in Parliament. Wow, we'll have more on that as soon as we can. Let's get your thoughts. As always, this is the National Pulse, but you're on the pulse, aren't you?
This week on Off Pitch Goals, Kaizer Chiefs greats and Bafana Bafana 2010 FIFA World Cup stars Rene Solonyane and Siphiwe Chabalala take on the food and beverage industry. The legendary duo own one of Soweto's most vibrant hangout spots and invite us to be the tastemakers of the inner workings of their establishment. Streaming on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturday, 5 July at 8:30 p.m. Off Pitch Goals, where we showcase how the stars score in business. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Keeping your family healthy this winter can feel like a daunting task. Try the Lung Shield range. It includes capsules to support healthy lungs and immunity, a syrup for kids that supports the immune system and promotes lung health, and an effervescent with 13 essential ingredients to optimize immune function. Put your family's health first this winter with the Lung Shield range. Available without a prescription at leading pharmacies. Lung Shield, prescribed by doctors, recommended by pharmacists.
They all believe they will be crowned champions, but gold medallions are reserved for the best of them all. It is the incredible clash of the 12 African women's national teams. Catch all the 24 matches of the Cap Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025 on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, let's hear your conversations. By the way, so I gave you the example of the Uber driver who's a footballer now, who's an Uber driver from Uganda. You have any other stories where you meet people just randomly? And I'm using the example of an e-hailing service, but it could be something else. You meet somebody in a lift and they share with you just the most remarkable story, you know. And I think the truth is it happens to all of us every single, well, not all of us every day, but every week or day. We've got some story or the other to tell, isn't it? But in the meantime, I want to hear what you have to say. We'll pick up voice notes in a moment, but let's get your calls. To KZN we go. In Tlantla, let's get your thoughts on the GNU.
Good afternoon, my brother. Thank you for taking up my call.
It's a pleasure, yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to demand my democracy, please. GNU, my brother, there's so much talk about GNU, of which it's party politics. Why are we not debating what the Constitution requires the same political parties to do? For example, addressing inequalities, addressing poverty, addressing the issues of education. And my brother, we are still going to be running around discussing the same issues or political issues and still being far from getting closer to our democracy, because we are not educating each other and ensuring that we enforce what the Constitution requires the political parties to do.
Okay, you see, in Tlantla, I hear you. Listen, I mean, here's the point. In my chat with Mbazima Shalowa as well, he also made the point about we need to talk about inequality and unemployment and all the big social ills. And we do talk about it. But there's no way we can also ignore the vehicles to serve as delivery, which is the political parties. So when they don't do so, and when they have their own arguments, how do we ignore them? That is the reality. To give you an example, right now, we've just got a letter confirming from the chief whip of the MK party, confirming that he's removed as part of the whippery team in Parliament. He's removed the spokesperson of the MK party. So I mean, do we just ignore that? And I'm talking about Inhlamulo Ndlela. I've chatted to him very often. Do we just ignore that as like that's not important? Let's just talk about inequality.
Ashraf.
Yeah.
Same topic, we're talking about inequality. Have we ever get a proper discussion about inequalities, in a sense where we get to differentiate inequalities from within labour markets and outside of labour markets?
Okay. In Tlantla, I think you've made your point. I need to move on to other people as well. Please understand that. But the answer is yes. You know, sometimes on the show, But the entire station, we have spoken about issues of inequality at length, and we will do so again because it is that important. I completely concur with you. But at the same time, we can't ignore the political issues that affect service delivery and leadership in the country. That's really the point. Nhlanhla, thank you for that. Dabiso in Polokwane, go for it.
No, Ashraf, a great day.
Thank
you. Ashraf, I mean, well, of course, the country's given us an opportunity through the upcoming national dialogue to reflect broadly around inequalities and how do we resolve all those socio-economic challenges that South Africa as a country faces. I hope and believe and trust that the national dialogue will give us that clear, a way on how do we resolve this particular issues. Well, I think that is an opportunity that we're getting, apart from all what we've been doing throughout the years in your shows and many other shows, venting our energy insofar as the challenges that we're faced with this particular country's concerned.
Well,
but I wanted to, I wanted us to look at. I was listening to to Helen Zille, one of the interviews. I think maybe it's based on the interview that was making after the so-called opening of a case. And I think I'm a little bit worried because it looks like the matter of the minister happens to be a slideshow. I mean, for an example, they started to talk about opening a case immediately after the deputy minister was fired. I mean, and the president where he is, like he said in his statement, that he's waiting for them to give him his names. Are they still interested in GNU? What exactly is it happening? I'm actually very confused.
Well,
even if you look at the department itself, there's a DA deputy minister within the Department of Higher Education. And I'm a little bit confused in terms of whether are they going forward, going back. I'm very much confused.
So let's leave it at that. I mean, your question, are they still interested in the GNU? I think, as we've discussed before every day, that they're not going to leave the GNU. And as per the conversation with Mbazima Shalowa today, he concurs. Listen to that podcast as well. They're going to stick around. But the question is, if we're asking, are they serious about the GNU? We could also ask, is the ANC serious about the GNU? Because one of the things that's emerged is they're part of a multi-party coalition. And sometimes, not always, sometimes the ANC does act like they act alone, like how they used to do before. I mean, that is true, isn't it? Think about it. This comment about Paul Mashatile.
It's actually laughable to hear that Paul Mashatile is now talking about clean cities, clean towns. They didn't care when, the rubbish were piling up. How long has it been laying down the road, in the streets, all around towns and cities? It's actually laughable. But of course, we have to remember it's election time. So this is just another gimmick of the ANC. Theresa, Cape Town.
Thank you. Election time hasn't even started. Let's see what happens when that happens. That's going to be another story. Here's a comment about something that touches on Uber drivers. Here's one.
Good evening, Ashraf. Good evening. Send that Ugandan guy, that Uber guy, to Northwest. We have a new team here that is promoted to to DSTV Magezi. Send him for trials here, the site.
I'm going to say you told him, and he's better make that. I mean, I have no idea how good he is. I can't. I'm just telling you what he said to me, and he didn't make it. And something went wrong, but who knows? Maybe he'll get to Magesi. What about the new Bloom Celtic, or whatever it's called now? Celtic United, I understand. No more Supersport United, but Celtic United. Strange name indeed. Right, yes, we're going to talk, by the way, about those developments within the MK party that comes up, and there's huge issues there. We'll talk about that on the other side of the news. Let's get the news now. Here's Greg Coase. It's 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Ashraf. In this news update, concern over halt in U.S. funding in Israel renews Gaza offensive. Good day to you. The Minister of Higher Education and Training, Nabuthen Kabane, says the halt in funding from the U.S. to tertiary institutions has had a devastating effect. She delivered her department's budget in the National Council of Provinces Earlier this year, US President Donald Trump signed an executive order terminating funding to South Africa. This meant a cut of billions of rands to institutions and researchers. The minister highlighted this matter in her budget speech.
The unexpected decision had devastating consequences for the South African higher education system, and out of 26 public universities, at least 13 were affected by the termination. However, there is reprieve as for the current medium-term development framework cycle. The department's budget has increased at an average annual rate of 4.4% in nominal terms.
The MK Party caucus in the National Assembly is heavily divided as some MPs have written to the party leader calling for the removal of Chief Whip Colleen Makubele, accusing her of unilateral and undemocratic decisions. The MPs have accused ideological betrayal, citing her on the stance she took on Israel. In a letter, some MPs further accuse Makubele of descending the caucus into a state of dysfunction. The MPs demand her removal after she and caucus leader John Hlophe removed Nhlamula Ndlela from the whippery of the party. Meanwhile, Hlophe has also written to party leader Jacob Zuma, complaining about the conduct of both Ndlela and Duduzile Zuma Sambudla as disruptive and not respecting the authority of the chief whip. Researcher Lisa Vetten has been accused of presenting an analysis that is sympathetic towards the complainant in South Africa's first ever formal probe into allegations of sexual harassment in the judiciary. Vetten, who's worked in the area of violence against women since 1991, in her analysis concluded, among other things, the judge's secretary, Andiswa Mengu, was not a willing participant in the text exchanges and that Judge President Selby Mbenenge wouldn't take no for an answer. Mbenenge's counsel, however, took issue with this analysis, stating that it omits certain exchanges in a bid to paint her as a passive, childlike person that fears authority, as the omitted messages show that she has agency, to which Vetten responded.
I'm not saying she's a passive person. If you look at my conclusions, is that she tries to exercise what agency she can within the constraints of her particular circumstances. There are times when she does engage with him as a way of trying to resolve the situation, is to think, and in fact this is something that she says, I say no, I do this, I do that, it doesn't work, so now I engage. And you can see this happening, and this is your point, that the way they engage does change.
The Nyombeni tavern owner is expected to take the stand tomorrow in the Nyombeni inquest at the East London Magistrates Court. The inquest is investigating who should be held liable for the death of the 21 teenagers at the tavern in 2022. Today, Ndlebu was the evidence leader of investigating officer Singisa Majoba.
And every day, and every day, knowing that the children are drinking, wandering about, I would even wake up at 12 o'clock to go and check in the bedroom of my child. And by the time the police officers were going to different homesteads, in some homes they arrived finding parents who were so drunk, not knowing what was going on.
Israeli planes and tanks have continued to attack areas north and south in Gaza, reportedly destroying homes and prompting thousands to flee. The Israeli army says it's launched a review of a strike yesterday on a cafe in Gaza. The BBC's Werrett Davis has more on that.
Overnight, Iran launched 2 waves of missiles in response to the Israeli attacks, setting off air raid alerts in parts of central and northern Israel.
In your sports this hour, Chituka to make test debut for boxer against Italy. Proteas smashed Zimbabwe by 328 runs and Saskok shifts focus to 2040 after failed 2036 Olympic Games bid attempt. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N14 in Lanseria has delays just north of the R512 Malibongwe Drive exit. In Midrand, the N1 northbound has a stationary truck before New Road, and the N1 southbound a stationary vehicle before Buccleuch interchange. In KZN, the N2 southbound has a crash on the ramp to the N3 westbound carriageway at Spaghetti Junction. The ramp's closed and you're asked to expect delays and diversions. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound slow moving towards Kromboom Road. The N1 outbound has a stationary vehicle on Plattekloof Hill. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So lots more we're going to cover on this very, very busy news day. We will get to later on after 5:30. We get a response from the ANC regarding some of the developments that are taking place politically in the country. We'll also get an analysis of the goings on with regard to the MK party and the chief whip and just the general issue around what is called their whippery team. Huge developments there. But let's start with an issue that, in fact, we touched on as, we certainly had people calling in about this a few days ago at the height of these storms in the Eastern Cape. And what they said and what many people said at the time, you maybe remember, that there were issues regarding, part of the issues, when there's storms and the amount of people who died, there were issues about the premier of their region in terms of where the premier is and what is being done and what is not being done. And I'm talking about the Eastern Cape Premier, Oscar Mabuyane. Now, one of the facts is that the premier was there, keeping an eye on what's going on and trying to assist, but then also took leave for a couple of days in order to be with his two sons who are undergoing traditional initiation. Now, there's a thought for many people that he was being effectively irresponsible. But there is another take on that issue, and the reasons I think are very, very interesting. So we thought, let's get the thoughts of the media liaison officer at the Eastern Cape Department of Health, and I'm talking about Mkhululi Ndamase. Now, he's writing in his personal capacity, so just keep that in mind. But I think the thoughts are something we need to take a note of. So much appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to your listeners. But let me first correct, I'm no longer the media liaison officer in the Eastern Cape.
Oh, I see. My apology. What is your position now anyway?
No longer in government. I work at an institution of higher learning.
Okay, got that. My apology for that, but okay, you do have an opinion, and you've written a piece, an open letter about that, specifically not so much about the general issues of initiation, but specifically zoning in on the absent premier. So give me your thoughts on that.
I think it's quite unfair and unfortunate to label the premier as being absent, because he has taken leave and he has left one of the most senior leaders in government, in Minister MEC Mvogo, not Minister, I mean. So it's quite unfortunate and unfair to say he's absent, because he took leave so that he could be with his two sons who are undergoing this rite of passage to manhood, which personally, as you would have read in my opinion, that I think it's quite something that must be admired, and it's something that more fathers and more uncles and more guardians should be doing, because as you would know that in the Eastern Cape, each and every single year, June, December, we always read news articles, listen on radio, watch on TV, hear horror stories of how initiates continue dying because, among other reasons, of the absence of male role models during the initiation process. So I think it's quite something that we should not be lambasting the premier for taking the leave to be with his two sons.
Okay, so perhaps just give us some context, keeping in mind there are many people listening who are very, very informed regarding the initiation, particularly in the Eastern Cape and the traditions around that. But there are many others who are not, who have opinions about it, maybe even uninformed opinions. So perhaps tell us what's expected around that period, both from the youngsters who partake, but then also the parents.
From the side of the initiates, is basically to go there and undergo this process. Unfortunately, I will not be able to go into detail of what goes on during the process, but it's a period whereby they go to the mountain to be sort of taught how to be men and how to be better human beings when they come out of the process, to be better human beings in society. Then when it comes to the parents and the guardians, it's basically to be there to guide them, to ensure that the initiates are not abused, to ensure that since they've gone through this process before, they basically imparting the knowledge and ensuring that we encourage boys to be responsible. We encourage boys not to be women abusers. As you would know, that we've got a serious issue of gender-based violence in the country. So those are some of the things that men are expected to be doing while they are part of the initiation process with their offspring.
So the accusations from people who felt that he was this absent premier, as I've alluded to, you effectively talking and alluding now to not so much an absent premier, but a present father.
Exactly. Let's first acknowledge that before he is a premier, he is a father. So as you would have known that just I think it was a day or two after the disasters hit in the Eastern Cape, particularly in the OR Tambo region, the premier was there on the ground with the victims, with the families. Before that, his members of executive were on the ground, and they continue being on the ground. And even tomorrow, the MEC for COGTA and cooperative governance and traditional affairs, Mr. Williams, will be in Tata again. So I really don't understand why Mr. Mabuyane is being criticized so much, considering that he was amongst the first people to be on the ground. He continues to ensure that his government is having a coordinated response to this crisis in the OR Tambo and Amatole districts.
I think the criticism may come from people who believe that, yes, as you said, he's first a father or a parent, but when you are the premier, you are in public office, and it really is one of the most senior positions in the country. And then you're the premier of a region which is now disaster struck, so people are dying. So it is a case, and we can have this debate all day long, which one is the bigger priority?
I don't think it's a case of one being a bigger priority than the other, but ensuring that one doesn't have to suffer because for the other to succeed. He's gone to personally look after his kids, while Minister MEC Mvogo is holding the fort as the acting premier. Also, there are also other MECs who've been on the ground, who continue being on the ground. So just because the premier is not personally there does not mean nothing is happening, and there's no response from the provincial government. And I would assume that even though he's taken leave, he might still be working behind the scenes, getting updates from his executives and also traditional leaders. That's just an assumption from me, because I'm not sure whether that's the case, but I would assume that he's still working behind the scenes.
What about your point about this present father? Typically during initiation season, what percentage of the young youth are supported by their father as a percentage?
I wouldn't exactly know the percentage, but in all the years that have gone by, the traditional leaders, politicians, and other civil society organization leaders have all bemoaned how there seems to be a lack of involvement from families, which is something that Premier Mabuyane himself has called on more men to be involved. So when the time came for him for his son to undergo the rite of passage, I think he more than walked the talk, and he's basically doing what he's been preaching all these years.
Do you think, therefore, maybe just as this is the passing shot here, that his position and how what he's done may well open the way for far more parents, or in this case fathers, to be there in support of their sons during this initiation period, compared to what has been the norm up to now?
I would really hope it would actually inspire more fathers to be involved and ensure that we get to a point of having 0 deaths of initiates during the winter and summer initiation seasons in the province.
Okay, that's where we can leave it. Appreciate your time and certainly sharing that piece that you wrote in the in the Sunday Times or Times Live. You may want to read that entire thing about Oscar Mabuyane, the Eastern Cape Premier. Thanks for your time, and that's Mkhululi Ndamase, the media, no more the media liaison officer, as we made the point. He's certainly not in government at all. Much appreciate your thoughts, saying, hey, give the man a break effectively, that understand that he may be absent for a couple of days within the disaster-struck Eastern Cape, but in reality, he's been very present regarding his children at a very critical time in their lives, and that presence effectively is a vital support that perhaps others need to be doing as well. We'll get your calls because you're on the pulse right after this.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
EFC is live this Thursday. After months of talk,
And you got nothing, bro. Beat someone relevant, then come show me what you got.
the middleweight division's biggest rivalry comes to a dramatic conclusion.
Massive drama here at the main event of EFC. Never seen anything like it. This crowd.
It's Luke Michael versus Shadrach Nsua for the middleweight title, EFC 125. Live from the World Sports Betting Arena this Thursday, July 3rd. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
So are you convinced about the case for Oscar Mabuyane, as you've just heard, or do you have a different take on that issue? Right, you're on the pulse. Let's hear you out. Dumile in the Eastern Cape. You're live. Go for it. Yeah, how's it, man?
Yes, I'm very well, thanks. Asaf, I think with the Premier, the problem is, when your brand rates are low, even a slight mistake seems like a big thing. I would say if the Premier had good ratings in the province as someone who leads the province very well, we wouldn't be in this situation, because really the main reason that people will be questioning why it's even on leave is the fact that you can have 100 people dying in a space of 10 days. I mean, it doesn't make sense. This rain rained for 10 days and killed 100 people. You want to tell me in all those days no one could pick it up that this is a problem? Someone must step in and assist these people. Where was the leadership? Wasn't anything communicated? I mean, even when the first 10 houses were submerged in water, or let's say 20 houses, couldn't have been their communication and then it leads to the Premier, because even 2 people dying is a lot. Sometimes I see we speak as if it's numbers. At least 2 people. To one person dying in a family is a lot if you imagine the trauma.
Yeah.
Well, as for the issue of initiation, people do, uncles can also do initiation. It doesn't have, but it's right that he's there. But I want to correct the fact that fathers are never there. Fathers are there. The only time that fathers are never there is only when there's a technicality to say maybe the father didn't finish paying for the child. Now the mother's family might give the father some technical difficulties, and it's not always easy to fall through those issues.
Okay.
And we discuss those. We talk as if fathers are irresponsible people. No, it's not the case.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for clearing that up, Dumile. That's Dumile's take on that one. What's Temba's take in Gqeberha? Go for it, Temba.
Thanks, Ashraf.
Yep.
Look, man, the Eastern Cape, unfortunately, is made up of a broad society. And amongst those is women who do not go to initiation schools. But we should be saying it out, those who have experience in this process. that anyone and any father who has taken his son to initiation school is not permitted to be walking and visiting houses where people have passed on. Is not permitted at all.
As part of the rights, okay, interesting,
Yes,
yeah.
It's not permitted because out there, even when you are at the initiation school, not anyone is allowed to go there. Not just anyone is allowed, but it's where there are homes or homesteads that people have passed on. No person will be frequenting in those houses is allowed to visit.
Even if that person is a premier, like, I mean, I know historically there would be no such thing as a premier, but in this case, let's call it a tribal chief, you know?
And unfortunately, even if that person is a premier, if the premier would have gone out, he would not have been allowed back into the initiation school, because one who is being exposed to such is believed to be carrying an aura of death, and it's not permitted over there.
Okay, well, there we are. Thanks for clearing that up. Sure, appreciate that call, Temba. Well, you know, that's one of the things. And again, there's no question, every day we have diverse opinions, but there's also some very important learning lessons that take place for all of us, right? And I mean, that's what we've just seen now in the last couple of calls. Besides the speaker we had others giving their own perspective of things. I tell you what, learning is what I want to know about the MK party. Goodness, man, what's next? We'll talk about it.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so there's been developments regarding the MK party, which we'll get to in just a moment. I want to also tell you, and I did touch on earlier on that, we should be chatting to the spokesperson from the ANC. So we'll chat to the national spokesperson, Mahlengi Bengu Mosiri, coming up around 5:45 or so. Anyway, right, let's see in the meantime if we're going to get to some of the callers, which we'll do, I think, right away. In fact, now, before we get to that, we do have, so I did say there's developments regarding the MK party. And with me now is Dr. In fact, let's get to the caller first. No, we're going to get to Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast. We'll get to them, then we'll get to the callers, right? So let's talk about the MK party. Dr. Breakfast, good as always. Good to chat with you on the National Pulse.
Thank you very much for having me. Long time no here.
Yeah, and it's been too long. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm thinking about something that I saw a long time ago, a movie called, I think it's called Blackboard Jungle. And do you get a sense that there's some learnings we need to understand here, because the MK party appears to have their own form of Blackboard Jungle where there's just no winners on a daily basis. What's happening now?
So I think the issue is that the party seems to be hostile towards people who are outsiders, who were not part of the formation of the party. I think it's the same thing that has really happened to Floyd, whereby the political space was not open for them to participate meaningfully. I think it might happen that maybe there seem to be threats, others who come from elsewhere. So that's the first point. The second point is, so before I move to the second point, meaning that there is a need for a democratization of the party. Very important. Democracy. Holding a conference, electing leaders, because that will really do away with this problem, in my view. Because, and this is the second point, at the moment, most of the things, they revolve around one person, which is the personality of Jacob Zuma. Even the media coverage that the story has been given, it's along the lines that Dr. Shope wrote a letter, expressing his unhappiness. But why do you write it to former President Zuma? You see now, there is no elected leadership that But under normal circumstances, you write to the elected leadership. Now you write to, I don't know, is it the founding father? But that doesn't sound right to me.
So, I mean, two things that you mentioned, Makubele, and then, of course, now we know there's another letter written to Ndlamulo, the national spokesperson, right? I mean, give us context of we'll talk about who he communicates with in a moment, but what has actually happened here? First around Colleen Makubele, and then now, of course, with Ndlamulo as well. So we're sort of battling to keep pace here.
So I think she seemed to be taking decisions by herself without getting a buy-in of other members of parliament, and I don't know, seem to be bullying the members of parliament or something along those lines. But whether that is true or not, that is everyone's guess. But I mean, it's quite interesting that every time someone who's new comes into the picture, there are these sorts of allegations. But I think for me, the party needs to tap itself on the back for a good job. Well, they've done very well as a new kid on the block to be in number 3. That is big deal. But now to build upon that and to keep the momentum going, they need to make sure that they institutionalize democracy if they want to be on an upward electoral trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, you're quite right. The party has done well, but lately, and I mean, now we find again with these, whether the people are being extra shifted sideways, and that's what we're trying to understand it. There's just far too much attrition, isn't it? So the question is, who makes the decisions, and at what stage do you sort of rein in the forces and say we need to be a united party?
Exactly. So I mean, it's an open secret. Decision making revolves around the former President Zuma. No doubt about that. That's why the letter was written to him. One of the letters it was addressed to him. That is the problem. I don't think party members must accept that uncritical. They need to engage with that. Under normal circumstances, in a democracy, people must be free to express their views strongly about those issues. So now, if you must be sensitive to this person, that is not a democratic party. That is something else now. And that is going to affect the growth of the party. So if the party, because the party has to envisage a situation whereby the party outlives, former President Zuma. The party has to have this political imagination of existing after President Zuma, for former President Zuma.
Let's then talk about, maybe some of the specifics, I mean, with regard to Colleen Makubele as well as Ndlamulo Ndlela, and because of the prominence of their positions, so where do they go from here? I mean, they're not axed from the parties, but they certainly removed from key positions that we would understand it. What happens to them now?
I can bet my bottom dollar they will not emerge again. Trust me. It has happened to other people. Where is where is Floyd Shivambu now? Where are the former FGs? Where is the former chief whip?
So you think there's no coming back? So, for example, let's say with a person like Ndlamulo, who is the spokesperson, it was very much in the news all of last week, around allegations made by Floyd Shivambu, and appeared to have come off pretty well himself. That's last week's story. This one here, you don't expect him to come back?
Look, I mean, I don't want to be everywhere now, because I think that to me that doesn't separate matter in terms of the fallout between him and Floyd. But with regards to the story that broke today about these latest developments, the point I'm making, it looks like when you have a fallout with the powerful, as the powerless, you don't emerge again. When you have a bad blood or a fallout with former President Zuma as a member, you don't emerge again. That's the point that I'm making. I'll be very surprised if they bounce back again.
Just the last thing. I mean, up to now, you've made the point maybe 2-3 times that ultimately it all starts and ends with Jacob Zuma, the former president of the country, right? Do you have any sense? And I know that John Hlophe is the deputy, but do you have any sense outside of Zuma, who actually is in a position to call the shots? I mean, who's in the engine room that advises Zuma? Do you have any sense of that?
Yeah. So behind closed doors, I mean, of course, there are people who are very close to him, even his daughter, and also other people that he has always been with, that he listens to.
But still, I mean, I say to that is not being democratic, because democracy means that the party belongs to the people and decisions, they come from the bottom, then they feed into decision making upward. But of course, I mean, even Floyd did advance an argument that there are people who are taking advantage of Jacob Zuma that he listens to, and they are the ones who are feeding him with all sorts of information.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it, hanging in the air, I suppose, because that's exactly where the party is, although they scored huge votes in that last election. Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, thanks for your time. Right, let's get to the news headlines. Here's Greg House.
Quick look at the headlines. The Minister of Higher Education and Training says the halt in funding from the US to tertiary institutions has had a devastating effect. Some businesses in East Cliff, south of Johannesburg, have been left without water, and no tankers have been dispatched to the area. And Ukrainian drones have attacked a weapons factory in a city in Russia, which is nearly 1,000 kilometers from the capital, Moscow. Full update on those stories and other news at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in Midrand has a crash at Olifantsfontein Road, and Main Road northbound in Kailami slow moving at Lachlan Road, and the M1 southbound in Johannesburg slow moving towards Crown Interchange. In KZN, the N2 southbound slow moving through the construction site at Sibaya. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound slow moving towards Okavango Road, and the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound has a stationary vehicle reported before Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
There were talks about the ticket prices for the box, but let's put that on pause. You want to talk about the team? Go for it.
Yes, Vincent Chituka will make his test debut in a strong side named by Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus for Saturday's Castle Lager incoming series opener against Italy in Pretoria. The side features 13 players from their recent win over the Barbarians. In the absence of Siya Kolisi, Jesse Creel will become the 67th Bok captain in Test history, while fit again Eben Etzebeth will be the vice captain. Then in cricket, the Proteas beat Zimbabwe by 328 runs on day 4 of the first Test in Bulawayo to claim a 1-0 series lead. Fast bowler Corbin Bosch followed up a first innings century by taking 5 for 43 as Zimbabwe were bowled out for 208, and Bosch is the 4th South African to score a century and take 5 wickets in an innings in a Test. Meanwhile, Captain Keshav Maharaj says that there's still room for improvement.
Where we can be a lot better, obviously starting up front, we can, in trying conditions we can be a little bit more sort of cautious in certain aspects, but I think also with the ball we can be a little bit more tidy in terms of not bowling too many bad balls, and I think in the second innings of our batting, I think we could have been a little bit more ruthless and not give too many soft dismissals away, because
in football, Amakhosi have unveiled left-back Nkanyiso Shinga, who has spent most of his career playing for different teams in Portugal. Shinga was scouted and developed by Popular KZN Academy, headed by veteran sports administrator and former Bafana Bafana team manager Gugu Marawa. Now, he was recently in the books of Portuguese second-tier side Alverca, and Shinga has been in the European country since 2015, and he's not the only signing, because Chiefs have also unveiled Portuguese striker Flavio Silva from Indonesia. Now, the Guinea-Bissau-born player will wear jersey number 77. Then in Olympic news, SASCOC President Barry Hendricks has confirmed that South Africa's bid to host the 2036 Olympic Games have been put on hold. The National Olympic Body will instead shift its focus to bidding for smaller international events, including World Volleyball Championship, before preparing a bid for the 2040 Olympic Games. South Africa was among 11 countries, including Morocco and Egypt, that had expressed interest in hosting the 2036 Games, but Hendricks says they missed the deadline to submit the necessary bid documents to the IOC.
We've not been able to get through the ministry, we've not been able to get cabinet sanction, so we're going to put that on hold for now. We can look at 2040, but then also look at other events that we need to encourage international organizations to bring their events to South Africa. For example, we've spoken to, when we were in Lausanne, to World Volleyball. They want to bring their professional league here, as well as their international championships, but also their General Assembly.
In athletics, former South African 400-meter champion Lat Pillay is preparing for his upcoming trip to Italy on the 15th of July. This is following his recovery from a short injury layoff. The University of Johannesburg accounting student is also set to represent the University Sport South Africa team at the World Student Games in Germany from the 16th to the 27th of July. And Pillay says that he's feeling fit and ready to resume his season.
So I have Potch now this weekend, just a nice opener, get the body back to racing. Then I'll go to Italy next month. I have a race on the 15th in Brescia. And then from there I'll jump over to World Students in Germany. And then, looking to go hard at that one.
In tennis third seed, Jessica Pegula suffered a shock straight sets defeat in her Wimbledon opener. This is against Italy's Elisabetta Cotteretto 6-2 and 6-3. It was only Cotteretto's second win against a top 10 player, and the 24-year-old has never been past the third round at Wimbledon, and her best Grand Slam performance was a run to the last 16 at last year's French Open. I'll have more on other sports later on between 7 and 8.
What's your big story?
The big story is that we might have a former Springbok in the studio. So to find out who we're talking to, you better listen between 7 and 8.
You better, okay?
This week on Off-Pitch Goals, Kaizer Chiefs greats and Bafana Bafana 2010 FIFA World Cup stars Renelo Letsolonyane and Siphiwe Chabalala take on the food and beverage industry. The legendary duo own one of Soweto's most vibrant hangout spots and invite us to be the tastemakers of the inner workings of their establishment. Streaming on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturday, 5 July at 8:30 p.m. Off-Pitch Goals, where we showcase how the stars score in business. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
EFC is live this Thursday. After months of talk,
And you got nothing, bro. Beat someone relevant, then come show me what you got.
the middleweight division's biggest rivalry comes to a dramatic conclusion.
Massive drama here at the main event of EFC. Never seen anything like it. This crowd.
It's Luke Michael versus Shadrach Nsua for the middleweight title, EFC 125. Live from the World Sports Betting Arena this Thursday, July 3rd. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
I mentioned the point about the Uber driver from Uganda looking for a team to play, and he plays at left back, and I see someone tweeted. In fact, I probably need to read out that someone if I can find the name. So TT Tobani says, I think your Uber driver should try his luck at Kaizer Chiefs. They are in serious need of a left back. Point made. Let's get to business now with Jimmy Moyaha setting the scene for his show 6 to 7, the SFM Market Update. Jimmy, you've got stories about news about illegal property developments, right? Tell me about that.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. Yes, my news aren't as hurtful as the news that you've just shared about Kaizer Chiefs supporters, and I'm glad I don't have to get involved in that conversation. But what we are going to be taking a look at is the city of Tshwane is looking to potentially demolish illegal property developments that they have identified as developments that have not followed proper procedure and proper municipal approvals to get them constructed. There's lots of properties around the city that meet this requirement. We're going to speak to the councillor for the Republican Conference of Tshwane around this and try and get a sense of what illegal properties we are referring to here and what the potential implications of that are. Then we've got a conversation with our banking specialist, Koki Koiman, around the ABSA CEO's announcement that they intend on revamping their strategy, potentially closing down some of or reducing some of the cash that they have at certain branches in an effort to reduce the security of the branches in some ways, or at least to make the branches more user-friendly. We're going to speak to a banking specialist around that and try and get a sense of what's happening there and why the move now. Then we've got a conversation with the team at Astral Foods. They've gotten an approval from the Department of Agriculture to vaccinate their breed stock from a poultry perspective. Now, Astral Foods is, of course, the largest poultry manufacturer on the African continent by company size, and so their role in the poultry space is quite an important one. We're going to speak to them around this vaccination approval that they've been working on for the last 18 months and what it means for the poultry space in South Africa in light of the avian influenza outbreaks that we've been seeing around the world. Then we've got a conversation with the team at Makwana Public Relations around Mercedes-Benz's decision to halt production in their East London plant. We know that the big manufacturers, at least from the automotive space, have been rather concerned around not only the state of the demand side of the economy, but the tariff conversation as well, and those tariff decisions that are potentially going to affect them from the United States' perspective. We're going to get a sense of what's going on there and what it means for jobs and what it means for local production. And then we're going to wrap up the show with an agri segment. We're looking at something quite important in the agri space, and that is the caution that's been raised by environmentalists, particularly at the Endangered Wildlife Trust, that the blue crane is now considered a vulnerable species. This is something that has been concerning for quite some time, at least for the last 15 years, and now to finally achieve vulnerable status is not the best thing for our national bird. We're going to take a look at that and take a look at what needs to be done to preserve the national bird. But before we get to all of that, the sense of how the markets have been moving throughout the day. It's been a calmer day as well on the markets. The rand gaining a lot of ground against the US dollar at 17 rand 65, 1 euro 20 rand 78, 1 Australian dollar 11.58, 1 British pound 24.19. So stronger against all of the major currencies, but really that standout move is against the US dollar at the moment. One Bitcoin, $106,000 a Bitcoin, or in rand terms, around 1.87 million rand. So that stronger rand benefiting that Bitcoin price for local buyers at least. International indices were quite mixed, with the Shanghai Composite the only index in the Asian markets that finished in the green. European markets were by and large in the red, with the DAX the biggest loser there, 0.8% down. The Nasdaq is currently down 1.1%. The S&P is down 0.4%. Our own local markets had another strong day. Resources coming to the party, 1.1% in the green. Industrials flat, about 2 basis points to the red, and financial stocks almost 0.8% to the green. As a result, the all-share 0.5% up, the top 40 0.5% up. So great day for local counters. And if we look at commodity prices before we go, that's probably what drove some of those positive movements. The gold price back at $3,341 a fine ounce. Brent crude still holding steady, $66.77 a barrel, and the platinum pricing $1,351 a fine ounce. Palladium $1,111 a fine ounce. We're going to look at these market movements in a bit more detail. I have the director at Courier International, Mia Krichler, joining me to take a look at some market movements a little later on. But that's a conversation reserved for just after the 6 p.m. news. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
All right, perfect. Thanks for that, Jimmy. 6 to 7, and Jimmy, of course, talking markets and business and all things in between that, if there's anything like that. And then 7 to 8, it's Top Sport, hosted by Tumi, of course. Don't forget that, right? So we're going to chat to the spokesperson for the ANC, the national spokesperson, coming up on some of the big topical current issues we've been talking to others about right after this.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there.
Okay, in fact, before we connect from an ANC perspective in a few minutes, I need to hear what you have to say. Churchill in Umtata, you've got a view on the DA. Go for it, Churchill. Okay, in fact, what we'll do, sorry, just let's put that pause there. Let's get to Billy in Cape Town. Billy, hi. Billy, hello.
Hi. Hello. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good indeed. Good to connect with you, Billy. Go for it.
I'm good, man. You know, the third excuse that we were listening to regarding the situation in the Eastern Cape, the guy that is trying to speak on behalf of the Premier making excuses, I think he's just, talking from his stomach. Maybe he's looking for a job in the office of the Premier. The Premier of the Eastern Cape is responsible and accountable for each and every soul within the province. And he cannot be seen to be taking leave to attend to some mumbo-jumbo initiation school while there's so many deaths due to the floods. In the first place, people should have been housed properly a very long time ago. That is the province where a bus load of passengers, Intercape buses, are shot at. That is a province where school children, little girls are seen crossing the river, going to school. They must swim across the river. There's a whole lot of failures.
So, Billy, couple of things. I mean, the fact that so many people died is terrible. The fact that we have a sense that the Eastern Cape were ill-equipped is terrible, but it's not exclusively the Eastern Cape. There are many other regions. When they have their days in the rain, they have the same problems, right? I hear that. The question is, how do you balance out the responsibilities of a premier within a disaster when he also appoints people to handle the disasters versus his responsibility as a parent? And it's interesting, I mean, you talked about mumbo-jumbo. I thought about it too, like culturally, maybe it's not important to you, but it's important to a whole lot of people in the Eastern Cape in our country.
Ashraf, the disaster that has befallen the province, my view is that it should take priority. Everybody in the country, not only him, each and every person in the country should be focusing on making sure that we assist the people.
I hear you, but I'm just going to interject you because I hear you. I'm saying to you, how do you balance out two responsibilities between that as being the premier and then being a parent? But you also, I'm just saying that because it's important that you're calling it out as a mumbo jumbo. Like, why would you do that when it's important to so many other people culturally? Maybe not to you.
Because the community that has suffered, should be prioritized. Nothing should be put ahead of assisting them. And he is sitting right at the top of administration. And then we must hear that he has delegated his responsibility to somebody in the office. But the truth of the matter is that he's running away from his failure.
Okay,
he's running away from his failure.
I mean, I don't know. I hear you, Billy. Thank you for that call. I'm just using as an example, not so much a premier, but if we look at disaster relief in South Africa, and probably amongst the leading disaster relief organizations in the world would be Gift of the Givers, right? And I mean, everybody knows Gift of the Givers and the role of Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman that he plays with that, right? But for example, are we in a situation thinking that he is the head, let's call him the premier of Gift of the Givers? Is he at every single disaster relief operation, or does he manage and execute it well enough with his team to ensure the work gets done? There's no way he can be at every one of them, and why would he be expected to do that when maybe his organizational skills are just that, the ability to mobilize and organize as opposed to physically removing people? I mean, lots of people do that. Just think about that. Okay, let's get to the ANC's national spokesperson right after this.
Ashraf Garda is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, so it's been a busy time for the DA. It's been a busy time for the African National Congress as well, and those two parties central to how the country is governed, central members of the Government of National Unity. As you know, we spoke to the DA spokesperson yesterday. We've had Mbazima Shalawa today, making the point very clear that hey, these two parties, they need each other. They're not going to walk away from each other no matter what. Of course, that's his perspective. Many may concur with that. Let's get another thought on where we are right now on what has been a very, very, I would think, tumultuous week of sorts with the Mahlangi Bengu Motsiri, the ANC's national spokesperson. Mahlangi, I appreciate you giving off your time here on the National Pulse.
Thank you very much, Ashraf.
Thank you. So let me ask you this, and I'm going to pick out from what was said by a caller today, right, which is, why are we talking about the ANC and the DA and who's doing what and which one is the deputy minister and whether they're going to leave and not going to leave, when in fact we as the media, in this case SAFM or the National Pulse, we are not talking about the biggest issues in the country, which is issues of inequality, unemployment, poverty, hopelessness. I mean, does he have a point that in fact we have been sidetracked and so have you?
Well, I think that there is merit to opine in that fashion, for as long as it has a qualification that says to discuss those issues in a meaningful and a solution-driven manner requires a stable sense of governance, such that there is no need to be discussing the GNU every day because the GNU is holding it tight, and therefore we can focus on issues that are of concern to our people, the intractable challenges that we experience. And so in that respect, the running to the course of the Democratic Alliance, including seeking to redress policies, and including policies that were adopted way before the Government of National Unity, when the statement of intent in the Government of National Unity expressly says that there will be no review or reversals of redress or transformation policies. So this is just but one example about how we're being sidetracked. And I think that caller has got it right.
So how do we move away? I mean, I may have said something similar, that they're two important issues to ignore. But how do we move? When I say we, you and the DA, how do you move away from being sidetracked to dealing with the issues? That means, how do you get to a sense of stability where we start talking every week about the GNU like as if, when's it going to stop? When is it going to stop? And wasting time on that, whereas we deal with the real big issues. How do we get there?
So how we get that really has been our plea to all parties in the GNU, including all other parties represented in Parliament, for a strong focus on the national interests, the things that unite us, the things that can help us to immediately tackle the triple challenges, gender-based violence and femicide included. All of those things require a country that can be in conversation, where there is less finger-pointing, and where government is really held to account because there's an active non-state actors such as organized civil society, all of that. It requires that. That is why those who are cynical of the national dialogue, they have their reasons for the cynicism. But that's precisely the reason the president is convening this national dialogue and all the processes leading to the final dialogue in 2026. And of course, I know that much of the narrative has really been to talk about the cost. I'm sure that the president will address the nation and demystify and debunk the myths about a 700 million rand, but focus the nation on why we need a national compensation, pretty much like it was done at CODESA negotiations, pretty much like it was done at the Congress of the People in 1955. It is in the DNA of South Africans to converse, whether we agree or not, to offer that critique, to be robust and frank. That is what delivered the democracy, and that is what is going to deliver a country where there is less inequality. There is poverty is eliminated, and where we address the unemployment challenge.
So, I mean, if I look at the last few days, and I personally am battling to keep track with a narrative from, from Andrew Whitfield being sacked, to the DA coming back and giving a 48-hour deadline and saying, what about the other ANC ministers who've been fingered around allegations of corruption, to then saying that they will not form part of this national dialogue, and then carrying out on their threat now to charge the higher education minister, as you well know. And I mean, there's a few other things that I'm probably missing, including, non-support for budget. So I'm struggling to keep track on it. How do you, as the ANC now, make sense of where we are? Because ultimately, yes, we can talk about everybody else and other parties, but if the ANC DA glue doesn't stick, we are on a sticky wicket in that case all of the time.
We really need to get out of it, and I think that my line of responding to the earlier question was emphasizing the fact that we have been convening one-on-one bilateral meetings with the DA leadership in order to address these issues, in order to address how do we keep the government of national unity intact in the national interest, and that we all focus on the matters of governance and service delivery. We had 2 of those meetings in the past 4 months, if not 3 months. And commitments were made around issues of conduct. Was the ANC strongly raised the fact that as much as the DA and other parties are represented in the government of national unity, the state system doesn't stop to work because they're now in the government of national unity. What am I saying? You cannot then have a deputy minister joining a delegation to the United States to go and decampaign a sovereign state like South Africa. There were undertakings that would not happen again. What do you know? There's Andrew Whitfield traveling abroad without the express permission of the president. This is a party that cannot own up, one, but also do believe that they should be the masters in the conversation. They should be the masters even within the government of national unity.
Are you clear that he was part of he went to effectively decampaign? I mean, is that what you're saying?
Well, they went to decampaign. They met a lot of interest groups in the U.S., and then they are pleading also for them to be assisted with overseeing, or almost as if policing the ANC leaders, because the ANC leaders are the ones that are destroying the country. Otherwise, everything is fine. When in fact we know that the main interest of the Democratic Alliance in the 7th Parliament, 7th Administration, is to reverse transformation. And actually, I could go on as far as saying, pretty much reserve what, from their perspective, was good about apartheid.
Okay, what about, I mean, and that's another whole 1 hour chat, I'm sure, right? What about their thoughts? I mean, this is not their word, but it's been come through from many people that certainly many callers have all said that the ANC position, or the president's position regarding holding Whitfield to account, is spot on in terms of the rule of law, in terms of how he understands it. So nobody's argued about that. But I think what's come through is what's come across as being duplicitous, which is what the DA has suggested, that you're hard on the one person, but you're not hard on many other people, including your Minister of Higher Education, and they could rattle off a whole lot of other names. So there's 2 ANCs, and they and the public are battling to understand which one is at work every single day.
If we have to have a logical conversation about that matter, Ashraf, the DA has to get to a point where they say we recognize the presidential prerogative. If they don't recognize it, then it means they don't agree with the constitution of the land. Now, conflating the matter of Andrew Whitfield, which was about not seeking permission, Andrew Whitfield by himself apologized and admitted to this. The DA had no problem with that. In fact, they had a replacement name to the president. Now, regarding the 2 colleagues that are currently undergoing corrective measures or discipline, the one being the Minister of Higher Education, who the process of the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education is at a very advanced stage. She's gone and apologized to Parliament. It is the decision of the Portfolio Committee, or the recommendation to the House, that will determine what type of sanction should there be a decision to sanction her. Now, the DA is now telling South Africa, they always complain about the overreach by the executive in the affairs of parliament. But now the DA turns around and say the president must fire people before a process that has been moving quite swiftly is completed. I just find that to also be very inconsistent. On the matter of the other colleague, Thembi Smelane, who did indicate that I'm sure South Africans are correct to be concerned about the fact that that matter should be brought to finality. We in the ANC have said that, and the president has made an undertaking to move with speed in dealing with that matter. So what am I saying? I'm saying that they cannot always have a new excuse for something. When they don't get their way, then they come and raise a new issue. In the same way that the VAT increase was being used to go to the courts, when in fact the DA had demanded from the ANC powers for the Western Cape and all of that, and not discussing opposition to the VAT.
Right. I'd love to continue this conversation. Unfortunately, our time is up, but it is the time of the GNU, and that's what it is. And perhaps many may say, find a way to work together. Appreciate your time. The ANC's national spokesperson, Mahlengi Bengu Motsiri, giving her thoughts in terms of where they are and effectively being clear about the issue of overreach. Well, that's the National Pulse. As always, we'll do it again tomorrow. Don't forget that hashtag, the National Pulse, all throughout the day, even tonight on our social media pages. I'll check it out. Let's get the news. Here's Greg Hurst.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Enjoy the